Laura? I'm not seeing the presentations in the on my. That's the whole agenda pack. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. I don't know. I know you do. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the January 24th meeting of the City Council. And I'd like to call this meeting to order. Madam City Clerk, if you could call the roll.
Yes, thank you. Mayor Edward Garcia.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Kelly Krebs. Here. Councilmember Jean Goss.
Here.
Councilmember Christine Lowe.
Present.
And Councilmember Robert Parkhurst.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum this evening.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Tonight, we're going to have Councilmember Jean Goss lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and provide a word of inspiration.
Please rise and face the flag. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, gosh, I'm supposed to be speaking to inspiration tonight, and that's what I intend to do, in spite of all the calamitous news that we have to face and tragedies that are plaguing our civilization. There's a lot of good news out there that kind of gets washed away with the bad news, and there's actually a lot more from where this is coming from. I have 3 pieces of good news to share with you tonight. Some of you probably are aware of these things, some of you are not. In any case, I think they're hopeful, and they should get us thinking about all the ways in which life is actually good, and there's good reason to be hopeful about life. The first is something I got from BBC. Death rates from cancer in the U.S. have fallen by 32% over the last 3 decades, going back to 1991, according to the American Cancer Society. The decline is thanks to prevention, screening, early diagnosis, and treatment of common cancers, including lung and breast cancer. The drop has meant 3.5 million fewer deaths. One particular bright spot was that cancer death rates in children and adolescents have seen large declines. Since the 1970s, cancer death rates in children have declined 71%, and by 61% for those ages 15 to 19, so yay. Up in San Luis County, where San Luis Obispo is, according to the San Luis Tribune, San Luis County had the highest number of monarch butterflies in more than 20 years this past November. More than 129 western monarch butterflies were counted, 129,000 western monarch butterflies were counted in the county by the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation. Employees and volunteers did this. According to preliminary data shared by local volunteer coordinator Jessica Griffith. This is coming right out of the Tribune article. That's the most counted in San Luis Obispo County in more than 20 years. In 1998, there were about 182,000 counted, according to the society. The numbers are giving some researchers hope that the western monarch butterfly population could be rebounding from devastatingly low numbers a few years ago that left some worrying the insect was on the verge of extinction. And finally, this one just really caught my eye, and I think it would be of interest to everybody here at the dais. A study of vegetation across New York City and some densely populated adjoining areas to New York City by Columbia University's Columbia Climate School has found that on many summer days, photosynthesis by trees and grasses absorbs all the carbon emissions produced by cars, trucks, and buses, and then some. The result, based on the new hyper-local vegetation maps they've created, points to the underappreciated importance of urban greenery in the carbon cycle. The study is published in the journal Environmental Research Letters. There is a caveat, and the caveat is that the carbon uptake occurs primarily during the growing season. In chilly New York, that's only April to mid-October, but in the study, it is said that vegetation in cities situated in warmer climates probably plays a bigger role in carbon uptake. Interesting and hopeful. And that's my report. I yield the floor, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Goss. Yes, that is some inspiration, some good news to hear in light of what we've been hearing lately. So thank you. Now we're moving on to the agenda. If there are no changes to the agenda, can I get a motion to approve today's agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I don't know if we do this now or during consent, but the second item on the consent item, I'd like to make a discussion item with the council's agreement.
Yeah, that would be appropriate to do that now. You want to pull item B from consent and discuss that?
Yes.
Okay. Madam City Clerk, is there a preference as to where that lies on discussion?
At the council's pleasure, it could be the first discussion item, and then you can move forward from there.
I think we should do that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Do I hear a motion in that?
With that, I will move to approve the amended agenda.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Now to council reports. Any reports from our council regarding city
You need
business?
a report out from closed session?
Oh,
before?
that's not on there. Thank you.
It is.
Oh, it is? My glasses aren't.
We've got
aren't
two more
working.
things before that, sorry.
Yes. Mr. City Attorney, could you report out from closed session?
Certainly. The City Council met in closed session to discuss anticipated litigation under Government Code Section 54956.9, and there is no reportable action.
Thank you. Now, if we could get a motion for approval of reading and resolutions and ordinances by title only.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. All right, we have some minutes from January 10th, 2023, our regular city council meeting. Do we have any changes to our minutes?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I made one minor change to it. The minute stated that we had made a motion to approve a four-way stop at both Mountain Trail and San Carlos, as well as Orange Grove and Rancho Road. We actually only made the former, so I had that modified in the minutes.
Thank you. That is substantive, and I do appreciate that.
With that, go ahead.
That is that change has been made to the minutes, and so if the council approves of the amended minutes, the amended minutes reflect that change made by Councilmember Parkhurst.
Thank you.
With that, I'll move to approve the amended minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Now we're on to mayor and city council reports. I do have new glasses. I'm getting used to them. So do we have any reports from council regarding city business?
I'll go ahead.
Councilmember Lowe, yes.
We had some really great events that I attended this last couple of weeks. The Women's Club had their mystery dinner fundraiser, and it was fantastic. It was fun. We had our interim chief, Henry, there, and my boyfriend Dan Bell was actually the murderer. He kept it quiet all day, so it was very exciting, and it was a great fundraiser. It was a really fun event. We also, I attended the Public Safety Town Hall meeting. That was great in that we had two reports from police and fire, as well as the YMCA, but the police and fire gave their 2022 reports, and it was really neat to see what improvements we have made and what we still need to work on. And then we did breakout sessions to hear from the public, which were really influential in how the new steps forward were presented by the fire department as well as the police department. So we look forward to a fantastic 2023 year with changes that accommodate our citizens, as well as improving and continuing with our amazing city and on our safety.
Thank you.
The last thing was attending the Planning Commission this last week, and the Planning Commission had one major project on 182 South Baldwin, which will be moving forward with where the R3 and R1 zoning meets. So they'll be looking for some guidance, which I'll add to our next agenda item.
Thank you, Councilmember Lowe.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Parkhurst.
There was one Clean Power Alliance meeting since our last city council meeting, nothing to report from that. We also, Mayor Pro Tem Krebs and myself met with I met as a solid waste committee, and we brought forward the amended contract with Athens, and something that I think is going to be on our agenda on the 14th. So there's a lot of discussion there. I think we've got a good thing going forward. The biggest thing out of it is going to be the recycling of organic waste. So pulling that out of the black bins and be putting them in the green bins, and there'll be a lot more to talk about from that after that, or at that meeting. And then I also attended the Senior Commission, and they're off to a great year. I see that we have a letter here from analyst Hines about the senior of Sierra Madre, and so it's another reminder to get in the notifications on that. I'm sure that the mayor has that as a part of his notes as well of nominating Sierra Madre's older person of the year.
Well, I do see 3 members of the commission, and I'll let them, I don't want to steal their thunder, I'll let them bring that forward.
All right, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Parkhurst. Councilmember Goss?
No report.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, to echo what Councilmember Parker said, we actually, just to put a little color on it, we actually had Councilmember Parkhurst and I were nominated to be a subcommittee to meet with Athens and discuss implementation of the relatively new state law around organic recycling. So that meeting, as stated, pretty much put the final touches on, I think, the proposal, and we will be talking at quite some detail about that at an upcoming meeting. I actually unfortunately missed the public safety meeting because we had a conflicting Natural Resources Commission meeting on that same night that I attended, and thought that they were doing great work, many of which their items will, I think, come before us in future meetings, including an update to the city's tree preservation and protection code, to perhaps to consider broadening it to apply to other types of horticulture beyond just specifically trees. And then there were other discussion items, but that was sort of the main item of discussion. And I just wanted to, and hopefully this is not usurping anybody else, but I've seen a number of announcements, so thought that it might be worth pointing out that the Civic Club is now accepting applications for the Sierra Madre Educational Award for seniors in high school who reside in Sierra Madre. So the deadline is April 7th. I think there'll be applications available here at the library, I think all over social media, and I think the high schools as well are a resource for that. So the deadline is April 7th, and so I just wanted to put that out there so those of you with seniors or who know seniors in high school can apply, and I know they do a great job of applauding and awarding our local students each year. So
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Krebs. Yes, the safety meeting has been discussed. As you recall, we did have a strategic planning meeting back in June. In November, our city manager gave an update on this strategic planning meeting, and there were a lot of residents that were surprised that they didn't know about it. So us as council and city management said, let's have some town halls regarding some of the issues that we're going to be discussing for planning and have the residents more involved. And I'm seeing a lot of the same faces tonight that I saw at that meeting. It was a fantastic meeting. I was, I guess,
the moderator of that meeting. It was in the Sierra Madre room at Sierra Vista Park. It was wonderful to see so many faces. We had stakeholders from the city, residents, business leaders, business owners rather, and we also had civic organizations represented, and it was a fantastic meeting. I'd estimate there was anywhere from 60 to 80 residents and business owners there. It was great because we did get to hear from both fire and police, and the roundtable was put on by both fire and police, and they would switch the tables. But the discussion had to do with what is Sierra Madre PD and fire doing well? What are the most important aspects of either the fire or the police department to these residents? And finally, what enhancements could we see? And there was, it went well. There was a scribe. I'm sure we're going to have a debrief from both fire and police on what was seen, at least on the website. It's my understanding that will be done. But I'd particularly like to thank our public safety departments for really putting this together. Natalia Flores in particular, she really made this event special. We got to hear from Sergeant Bailey and Captain Bastillos. Yeah, they gave a debrief, and I think it went very well. On June 19th, I attended the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments, the COG meeting. This was the first meeting of the year. We recognized State Senator Susan Rubio for tackling homelessness and her involvement in the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust, getting money out. There's been a lot of projects that have been going forward in other cities, tiny homes, getting the homelessness problem under wraps, and she's really doing a great job there. And then finally on January 23rd, yesterday, the Library Board of Trustees met in Chambers, and it was a good meeting. We heard updates from the Library Foundation. Former Mayor Rob Stockley gave a presentation basically stating that the foundation is now, it's still holding. There really is just himself and I think former mayor, another former mayor, but they're ready to reignite the foundation if needed. We heard from Ms. Ben Cosme from the library, Friends of the Library. She gave an update as well. And we also heard from our Deputy Director of Public Works. He gave an update on what's been going on as far as the renovation of the library. It's my understanding we've had dozens of companies that have come forward with an RFP, and he wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the RFP process we would have heard from maybe 100 different companies. So it's encouraging that the library project is moving forward. We're getting that moving forward, which is fantastic. I also have thank you. I also have a few announcements that I'd like to make. On the serious note, the City of Sierra Madre expresses our sincerest condolences to the City of Monterey Park for the senseless acts of violence that occurred over the weekend. As a member of the San Gabriel Valley, we grieve alongside Monterey Park, all the victims and their families. The Lunar New Year is meant to be a time of joyous celebrations. The City Council renounces these acts of violence and stands in unity with the community of Monterey Park. Also, I'd like to announce that our local trails have reopened, both Bailey Canyon Trail and Mount Wilson Trail. Please be safe on these trails. They are still in some dangerous conditions, but we have had some of our residents up there trying to make those a little more accommodating. And also, on another sad note, on Friday we learned of the passing of Judith Gold. Mrs. Gold was one of the original members of Preserve Sierra Madre. She and her husband Barry were very active in the community. I got to know Barry when I served on a couple of commissions with him. We became very well acquainted, I would say even friends, and I got to know Judith through Barry, and there's no doubt that Barry and Judith were really residents that had nothing but the best intentions for Sierra Madre in mind. They will be missed. We will miss Judy. We offer condolences to her children and family in their time of sorrow. And with that, move on with our agenda. We have a few presentations. The first presentation that we will have is recognizing Mr. Dev as the Teacher of the Year. I believe,
Mayor?
yes,
Do we need to do public comment? for
we
items?
do need to do public comment. I'm sorry, I'm trying to push this meeting through too fast. And I understand that there was quite a bit of public comment for items that are not on the agenda. I'm not trying to squelch the voice of the public. I apologize. Madam City Clerk, if we can have for items not, public comment for items not on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have 5 speaker cards. The first card submitted is from Bill Ukropina and Patricia Ostler from the Cancer Support Community Group.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. My name is Bill Ukropina. Grew up all my life in this area. I've lived for 38 years. I'm your neighbor in East Pasadena. I'm very, very pleased to tell you that I've been a very active member of the Cancer Support Community Pasadena the last 10 years. I've been on the board for 5 years. We've been looking for a new location in the San Gabriel Valley for a year and a half. We're very pleased to tell you that we purchased the northeast corner of Lima and Sierra Madre Boulevard, which is 321-331 West Sierra Madre Boulevard. A former architecture firm and as a grocery store before then. It will become our headquarters. We're going through $1,200,000 renovation, and we are pleased to be in your city. And I want to introduce our executive director, Patricia Ostler, who will tell you a little bit about our organization.
Good evening. I'd like to start by acknowledging Councilmember Goss's inspirational comments about survivorship rates. That's a very timely subject. Especially with us being here tonight to introduce ourselves. I am the Executive Director of Cancer Support Community. We are currently located in Pasadena. We've been in Pasadena for 33 years, but we serve the entire San Gabriel Valley. For those of you who aren't familiar about what we do, we take care of any cancer patient and their family. We provide support, education, and hope. Essentially, we team with the medical facilities. While somebody facing cancer may be at a hospital getting treatment for the body, we provide treatment for the mind, for the soul, for the emotions. Our programs are evidence-based. We know that in partnership with medical treatment and our emotional support, that people facing cancer will improve their quality of life, and for many of them, they may enhance their patient outcomes. Importantly, all of our programs are offered free of charge to our participants. We offer 14 weekly support groups led by professional therapists. We offer over 75 weekly educational workshops put on by members of our professional advisory network, including oncologists at various wonderful hospitals in the area and other medical experts. And we also provide healthy lifestyle classes. Yes, survivorship rates are growing, but that doesn't change the fact that 1.9 million people were diagnosed with cancer across our country. 40 of those people reside in Los Angeles County. And because of the pandemic, many people put off their annual screenings for various types of cancer, and we are seeing more later stage cancer diagnoses. On the brighter side, we are thrilled to be moving to Sierra Madre, and I want to thank the City Council, any other city officials here today, residents and business owners for the warm welcome that you have given us as we transition to Sierra Madre. As Bill said, we're thrilled with our purchase. We hope to be able to move in at the end of June or early July. We look forward to being a positive influence, time's up, in this community. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome to Sierra Madre.
Thanks.
We have some brochures on our new building and some information that I'll just leave for the council. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our grand opening is going to be in August. We're going to invite all of you.
You're welcome. And in my expedience, my unwarranted expediency, I didn't go over the ground rules of public comment. So please limit your comments to 3 minutes. When you approach the lectern, please state your name and residence. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, our next speaker is Pat Holland.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and staff. My name is Pat Holland. I live at 101 Colony Drive, and also I'm a member of the Senior Community Commission for 6 years and counting. But the reason I'm here tonight is to let you know, as Councilmember Parker started to say, that we are in the process of doing the Older American of the Year award for the city of Sierra Madre once again. In 2020, we had to cancel it because of the COVID. 2021, we had to cancel it because of COVID. 2022, the county was not going to participate, but we, as a commission and the staff, decided we were going to participate. So we had a Older American of the Year award at the Hart Park House, and it was well attended. And this year, we're going to go back to doing our traditional Older American of the Year award, and we're seeking nominations. You have a flyer in front of you of the information that's going to be going on. The nominee that people will submit has to be someone who's outstanding in community service, has to be an individual. It can be a couple, it can be a group, and it can be an organization, but not someone who has served on the Senior Community Commission currently. The nominee must be at least 60 years young by May of this year, and a resident of Sierra Madre. The nominations must be submitted by March 16th of this year, and you can either submit them to the Senior Center over at Hart Park House, or at the City Hall, or either by mail or in person. Then the Senior Community Commission will select the nominee on April 6th at our regular April meeting. And then that meeting is held at 3 o'clock in council chambers. And then the honoree will be recognized at a reception on May 10th at the Hart Park House Senior Center. If the county participates this year, which they hope they do, there will also be a dinner honoring that nominee and other nominees throughout the county at a location to be announced later. So anyway, you have 3 dates to remember. March 16th is when the nominations have to be in. April 6th, when we will select the nominee or the honoree, and then May 10th, we'll have the dinner. So those people who are going to fill out the nomination forms, if you filled them out before and we didn't have anybody because of the pandemic, you don't have to reinvent the wheel and rewrite the entire nomination form. If you still have a copy of it, just update it and submit it, and we'll go from there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Holland.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Jackie Pergola.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Jackie Pergola. I reside at 473 North Cannon here in town, and I'm a member of the Senior Commission. I'm here tonight to tell you about our first senior excursion that will be happening on March 9th, and we're going to go to the Autry Museum. They have a special exhibit going on called China Poblano, and it's Mexican-American traditional and colonial costumes, so it should be just full of color and really wonderful. There's a minimum, a small amount that we do charge for this, thanks to the recycling money that the Senior Commission gets. It was started by Nancy Walsh, so we pay for most of the bus tour, and it's a really nice bus, and we have a good time. After the museum, we are going to go to the Tam O'Shanter Inn for lunch, and then be back home by 4 o'clock. And just a side note, China Poblana, in this Mexican-American community, China means female servant. Poblana means of the Pueblo. So it's the servant of the Pueblo. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Pergola.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Pat Crock.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Patricia Kroc. I reside at 500 Fairview in Sierra Madre. I am also chairman of the Senior Commission this year and would just like to give you some more good news on what the Senior Commission is up to for the month of February. Starting on February 7th, that's a Tuesday at 1 o'clock at the Hart Park House, we are doing a senior Valentine cake decorating class. So that should be fun. Reservations will be required. All of this information will be in the Senior Moments coming out in early February. On Tuesday, February 14th from 3 to 5, again at the Hart Park House, we are having a Valentine's social for all the seniors in Sierra Madre at no charge. Show up, have some food, have some fun. We've got raffle prizes and some spirited beverages you might want to enjoy. And last but not least, Mayor Garcia will be happy to hear this. On Thursday, February 23rd at 1 o'clock, bingo is back at the Hart Park House with food. We've styled up on the raffle prizes, and it's just a fun time. So please come on down and join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Kroc. Yes, I've been known to stop by the bingo every now and then.
Mr. Mayor, Nancy Valentine is the next speaker.
Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Nancy Valentine. I live in Altadena, and I'm here representing the Pasadena Village. And I'm so glad I came after these senior councilwomen because we are an organization. The Village is a national organization, and it is to help older adults who want to stay in place, live in place, and have a full life. And one of the greatest obstacles to this is being alone and feeling disconnected. So the Village movement is celebrating its 2nd anniversary, and we have chosen this city, Sierra Madre, because you have such wonderful active senior programs. There's going to be a National Village Days and Older Adult Resource Fair on Wednesday, February 15th at the Women's Club right here in town. It is from 10 a.m. to 12, and you're going to be learning about the local nonprofits and businesses who offer services and free support to older adults, including our organization, which is the Pasadena Village, which encompasses all neighboring cities. And it helps aging adults and also their families. So if you have a mother or a grandmother you want to move into town, maybe she's someplace else, you don't want her to feel disconnected. This is a place for seniors to get together, and then if something happens, there are free resources. We want to make sure that they can live vibrant lives. I hope that you will all attend. Again, this is on the 15th. It's free, there's food, and prizes. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Ms. Valentine.
Ms. Valentine, did you have a time for that on the 15th?
Yes,
10 to noon.
to 12.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
We have no other speaker cards, Mr. Mayor, and no emails were received for items not on the agenda.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Dev. Now we can move on to the presentations. I'd like to introduce Carol Ann Hagley from the San Gabriel Valley Mosquito and Vector Control District that will be recognizing Mr. Dev as the 2022 Public Health Teacher of the Year.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome.
My name is Carol Ann Hagley. I'm from the San Gabriel Valley Mosquito and Vector Control District, and I'm pleased tonight to present one of Sierra Madre's teachers with our 2022 Public Health Teacher of the Year Award. We have over 550 schools in our jurisdictional boundary, and each school gets the same e-blast and information about our free science education programs. So the teachers that not only respond to our call for action, but step up and really lean into our programs and resources that we offer are already outstanding educators. Our award recipient went a step further by signing up for our Operation Mosquito Grid Train the Trainer class that we offered at Cal Poly Pomona, and spent one of his precious summer vacation days learning about 80s mosquito biology and control. Each fall, we offer free public health citizen science programs to both elementary and middle school schools. The programs provide the tools and skills so students can engage in the science of surveillance and control of mosquitoes on their properties. This fall, we had 7 teachers sign up for our middle school citizen science program, Operation Mosquito Grid, and we also had 9 teachers sign up for our elementary school citizen science vector inspector program. In all, 16 wonderful, enthusiastic teachers from 5 different school districts signed their classes up, and 692 students participated in public health citizen science in the fall of 2022. Of those, 150 were our award recipients students. It was a tough decision picking the public health teacher of the year, so being teachers ourselves, we created a rubric to help us decide who to award. Some of the performance measurements we compared were how responsive the teacher was to our communications, whether they used material we provided, how many of their students participated, and how many of those followed through to complete the program. One teacher stood out on all those measurements and more. So tonight, I'm honored to present the 2022 Public Health Teacher of the Year Award to Mr. Ravi Dev, science teacher at Sierra Madre Middle School. Congratulations, Mr. Dev. Can I get someone to take a picture?
Congratulations, Mr. Dev. The City of Sierra Madre would also like to honor you as well with a certificate of recognition. It states, in recognition of the 2022 Public Health Teacher of the Year, Mr. Ravi Dev, the City Council extends its sincerest congratulations. By the City of Sierra Madre City Council, Mayor Edward Garcia, Mayor Pro Tem Kelly Krebs, and Council members Jean Goss, Christine Lowe, and Robert Parkhurst. Congratulations. You taught my son Justin. Thank you, Mr. Dev and Ms. Hagley. That's great. We've heard from former Mayor Capocha the importance of the 80s mosquitoes and being able to identify that. So that's some good work. Thank you. The next presentation we have is the introduction of our new fire captain, Robert Ladd. If I could welcome Chief Bartlett down.
Evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. It's my pleasure this evening to introduce our newest member to our fire family and our community. Is going to be Robert Ladd, who's going to be our newest captain for A shift. Captain Ladd resides in Redlands for the last 21 years with his wife Dawn and 2 sons, Austin and Jacob. He's a U.S. Air Force veteran, and he's also served 39 years in the fire service, most recently 22 of those being with the Los Angeles Fire Department, for which he's retired and decided to come join our family and support our community as well. So he's coming to us with quite a bit of experience that's going to be very valuable to not only our members and our staff, but to the community as well and our area. So we'd like to say, take this opportunity to introduce him to all the members of the community as well as yourselves. And are we going to do a swearing in? Okay, city clerk, we're going to do this official, Rob.
Okay. 39 years.
Yeah. So have you raise
Oh,
your right hand, and hopefully I don't have to borrow those glasses from you.
Here if you need them.
So I, state your name,
Robert Ladd,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution
that I will support and defend the Constitution
of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic.
that I will bear truth, faith, and allegiance
I will bear truth, faith, and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California.
that I take this obligation freely
I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I'm about to enter. That's
Yeah,
it.
congratulations.
There you go.
Now we're gonna make it official. And then if I could invite Captain Ladd's wife, Dawn, up to do the traditional badge pinning. And we're gonna see how strong this marriage is, Rob. This
Oh,
will,
we all know how this is gonna
This
go.
will make a hole if she so chooses, Dawn, if you would.
Rescue here? Okay. Good enough. Thank you.
I get to see you every day. Thank you very much, and again, welcome, Rob. Thank you.
Welcome, Captain Ladd. Thank you.
Welcome.
It's amazing, 39 years of service, and he looks like he's 39 years old. It's amazing. Thank you. I mean it. Now for our third and final presentation, I'd like to invite Helen Romero Shaw of Southern California Gas.
I've got some, good evening, Mayor Garcia, City Council, City Manager, and the rest of city staff. I'm Helen Romero Shaw. I'm the Public Affairs Manager for Southern California Gas Company, and I'm the liaison to the city of Sierra Madre. So I know a few of you, but there's a lot of new faces too, so I do have business cards for all of you. And so you know how to get a hold of me, but put the business card right in front of you, so you can call me if you have a question regarding Southern California Gas Company. Let's see, I did make available a PowerPoint. I do want to explain, and that's why I'm here, these historically really high gas bills that our customers are encountering if they haven't already received their bill. I know there's going to be sticker shock because the amount will be double from last year. It could even be higher. And there are some factors beyond the control of Southern California Gas Company. Did you want me to move it along, or, okay. Okay, so this one here? Okay. So, for instance, if your bill was $65 winter, it will be closer to 160. If it was around 130 last winter, customers can expect to see bills around 315 this year. So, SoCal Gas purchases natural gas on behalf of our customers. They are residential and small business customers. We buy it from regional, national markets, which are domestic, which means that they come from the Midwest, and because it's been so cold across the United States, there is a big demand for natural gas. And especially on the West Coast, there's been a very high demand, which has, when there's supply and demand, the prices go up. So it's been especially cold in the states of Oregon and Washington, along with, with California. So there's been, I wanted to explain to you why this is occurring. The U.S. Energy Information Commission came up with some factors. Number one, well, I already mentioned the high demand. It's just colder. We're using our heaters, and it's expected that the people that live in the Midwest and Eastern states, they use their heaters, but there is just a bigger demand on the West Coast. The other is the supplies have tightened. We purchase also natural gas from Canada and the Rocky Mountains, and so there's been reduced supplies available from those entities. There's also a major pipeline. Now, when we buy natural gas, it comes in pipelines, and it comes into California. We take custody of the natural gas when it crosses into California. We meaning Southern California Gas Company. And so there's a major pipeline that's been out of service that comes from Texas. And so this is slowing the flow of natural gas. And also, we do store gas, but there's been, we're not able to store gas, and so as we used to in the past. So all these are all factors that are really impacting the gas bills. Now, I've been asked, my friends asked me, my relatives, when are we going to get back to normal? Well, as you know, natural gas bills have always been probably the lowest utility bill that you've encountered in the past, and then you expected it to go up in the winter. But this time it's really out of control. It's really a lot of, the prices are really high. So as soon as it starts warming up and there's less demand, as soon as we can get more supplies, we do have a whole department. It's called a gas acquisition department. They're on their computers. They're constantly looking for the purchase of natural gas at the lowest amount. And we used to, in the past, buy natural gas during the summer when there was plenty of supply and the prices were lower, and then we would store it. So these people are on their computers, similar to buying stocks. When one day they're higher, one day they're lower. We have a responsibility as a utility. We're under the California Public Utilities Commission to make sure that the energy is there for the customer. And that's the bottom line. So what can the customer do to save energy, save money? There are some suggestions here that they're in the PowerPoint. Lowering your thermostat 3 to 5 degrees. If your health permits, washing clothes in cold water, you can save up to 10% on water heating costs. Consider turning down the temperature on your water heater. That's something that customers forget to do. If you can lower it to 120, you can actually save 22% on your bills. So, and then also installing caulking and weather stripping, and then limit the use of non-essential equipment such as spas, pool heaters, and fireplaces. So those are just some suggestions if the customer is able to do this. Now, we have numerous programs and services. We offer energy saving tips. You can sign up for text bill tracker alerts so you can keep track of your gas usage. You may be eligible for level pay plan, which averages your annual natural gas use, and then you pay a certain amount each month, so you don't get a real high bill during the cold months. So there's customer assistance programs for people that are income stressed. There's the CARE program, 20% off your bill. There's also ESAP, and they're all listed there. Medical baseline allowance program, that might be something that someone who has a medical condition, they might be able to qualify for that. And then the gas assistance fund. This is a one-time fund for a person to get $100 off their bill. And gas company just put in $1 million into this fund. So that might be something that an income qualified customer might look at. So I invite you to go to our website, and there's all that information on the website. However, if you don't have a computer or you don't have internet, you can always call the customer service number, and that's the number on your bill. It's 800-427-2200, and you will get a customer representative, and these reps have access to your individual accounts. They're the only ones that have the ability to go into your accounts, and they can talk to you about any programs that you might qualify for. And that's the conclusion of my presentation. I did bring some brochures that actually list customer assistance programs, and then I also brought some sheets that I can share with the city council, and then you can leave some of these out in the lobby if you want. And so I'll give this to you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Romero-Shaw. Do we have any questions from the council?
I guess one of the questions I've been hearing is, and from what I understand, the Southern California Gas Company is not profiting more from the increase in prices.
No, we buy the commodity, and whatever that amount is, we do not mark it up, we do not make a profit, but we have to pass whatever the amount is to our customers. And in the past, as I said, we were able to buy natural gas when it was less expensive, and we passed along whatever that amount was. And it was very reasonable, and people were real happy at that time. And so now they're mad at us. No, but no, we don't mark it up. Thank you for bringing that out, Councilwoman.
Mr. Romero-Shaw, how does Southern California Gas make its money?
Make its money on transporting the natural gas.
So it's the pipes in the ground. It is the infrastructure is how it makes money.
Yes, and like I said, we're under the California Public Utilities Commission. They scrutinize us. They look at our budgets, and we are allowed a certain percentage of, so that we can run the system, you know, and pay our employees and, you know, benefits. So, so they keep us in check. So, but the commodity itself, we do not add anything to it.
What's the current delta between Henry Hub and SoCal City Gate?
Okay, you're getting into an area that I have other people that are experts, but Henry Hub is in the Midwest. That's just a name where all the where natural gas is produced. And what is that to the, what was the second part?
To SoCal City Gate.
So
here's where I'm going with this.
Okay.
This comes from a January 11th Washington Post, Wall Street Journal article. And you know, we saw spikes in natural gas prices across the country. But since that time, the prices come down, except for in California. And part of the problem is, so Henry Hub is the like the clearing price across most of the country. If you think about, like, when people talk about a price for a barrel of oil, Henry Hub is the equivalent of that for natural gas. But in California right now, the price of that is about 10 times the difference. So why is the price 10 times difference in California compared to Henry Hub? It's because of two reasons. One of them is because that Texas pipeline has been shut down. And the second reason is because the storage facility that we used to be able to store gas in, Aliso Canyon, it can't be used anymore because it had a humongous release.
So those are all factors, yes.
Right. So what is the status of Aliso Canyon, and what is the status of the Texas pipeline? When's the Texas pipeline expected to reach capacity, and what is the work that's going on with Aliso Canyon?
Okay, Aliso Canyon actually is not completely closed down.
Right.
There used to be 114 wells that were active, and now, I believe now it's in the 70s. And so we have strict protocols imposed by the regulatory bodies, so we're only able to store gas, you know, a certain amount of gas. And we have 3 other storage fields too, but they're smaller. So we are storing gas, but not at the level that we were used to. See, we would typically pull it out at this time and, you know, put it in the gas system, and this kind of minimized the impact of the bills. So that's the storage field. The Texas pipeline, I still need to look into that. I did check before I came here. It's still out of service. I don't know when it's going to be repaired. I hope soon, because like I said, the gas flows in these pipelines. They're high pressure pipelines. And then they come into California, and then they go into our distribution system.
And
I'll get back to you on that, Councilman.
And so why don't you have the level as in the past of the Aliso Canyon?
Because the regulatory bodies put a lot of restrictions. They just put restrictions. That's, you know,
Well, they put restrictions on it because you had a very large uncontrolled release, did they not?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes, that was 8 years ago, I believe, yes.
And so you haven't been able to get it back up to capacity in the previous 8 years?
No, because of the, like I said, we were not allowed to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Goss, do you have anything?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem? Mr. Marichal, I'd like to thank you. We did receive an email that was forwarded to us from the city manager between this council meeting and the previous one, and you showed up, which is fantastic. I do appreciate that. You know the community is probably not very happy with the gas company, and you obviously have nothing to do with the pricing of the commodity.
Believe me, I've heard from my friends, I've heard from my family.
But I do appreciate you coming out, and
Okay.
and I think Councilmember Parkhurst and myself had read some of the similar Wall Street Journal articles, and yeah, it's kind of a bitter pill to swallow, and We had a little bit of advance notice, so the Garcia household has really turned their thermostat down, and we have the audacity of actually wearing pants and sweatshirts in our house rather than shorts and t-shirts during this cold weather. So I'd encourage residents to do that. Yeah, I did do a little more research as well on pricing. As an economist, I'm curious about these things, and it's my understanding that another issue that exacerbated the supply is that we've had this mega drought on the West Coast, including Oregon and Washington. Oregon and Washington produce a lot of electricity through hydro. They weren't able to because of this issue. And since that happened, they had to fire up their electricity generating plants with natural gas. The ones that normally lie dormant were then being used. The natural gas market, my understanding, I'm learning, is very segmented. So we are at the end of a pipeline, so we get what's left. And we can see in Louisiana, this commodity is at all-time lows for this time of the year. So yeah, I think it's a kind of a broken market because of the segmentation. Where unfortunately we're at the end of the line, maybe because we have a warmer climate statewide relative to the East Coast. But there are reasons, but thank you for coming out, introducing the level pay plans, all those things that are important to our residents to be aware of. And I appreciate you bringing literature too, to make sure that we are aware that the bills will be higher in the short term, and we can do our part by mitigating some of that by turning our thermostats down.
Yes.
So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome, and feel free to contact me, and I'll get back to you about when Texas pipeline goes back into service or close to service. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for presentation. All right, moving along. We are now on to the consent calendar. We have now 2 items in consent. And we have item A and item C. I'd like to open up to questions from the council. Do we have any questions regarding our warrants on item A? Councilmember Parkhurst, please.
No,
Oh, I thought you said you do.
No,
I'm
I
sorry.
do not.
Okay. Item C? No? Okay, I'd like to open up the consent calendar to public comment. Did we receive any cards?
There were no cards received, nor were any emails received.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Okay, any comments from the council on the consent calendar? Nope. Okay.
Approve.
There we go.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Now we're moving on to our 2 public hearings. The first one is the approval of amendment to the fee schedule fiscal year 2022-2023, and I'd like to open the public hearing. Do we have a presentation?
Yes, a staff report.
Thank you.
So, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. So, due to the California Legislature and county fee increases, staff is proposing an amendment to 2 sections of the current fee schedule. The first section is related to the environmental fees that are set by the county, and these are direct pass-through fees. The county has recently adopted an increase, and the amendment would ensure that the fee matches the current county fee. The second section is to add a description for the preliminary design review, and this is to be consistent with the previously adopted ordinance. So staff recommendation is to approve the amendments to the fiscal year 22-23 fee schedule, and this concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Short and sweet. Thank you. And to the point. Thank you. Any questions from council for Finance Director?
Not regarding the fees, but could we add to the agenda to start analyzing the actual preliminary design review and how it's changed, or should I add that at?
We'll handle that at the end of the meeting.
Okay, new business.
New business, yeah,
Because
thank
that's
you.
not yours.
I guess I've just to clarify, these are just pass-through fees, right? So it doesn't change, it has 0 impact on the Sierra Madre budget, right? No revenue, no expenses.
The preliminary design review would be staff incurred time for the review, and the environmental fees is passed through to the county. No,
And the design review, the increase in the cost is because why?
it's not an increase to the cost. It is including a preliminary design review.
It's just changing it in the process. It moves it up in the process. Is that right?
Yeah. Claire knows a little bit more about the actual process.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Shouldn't ask you for that.
Thank you, council member. So the preliminary design review process is a new process that we adopted back in April 2022 by ordinances. Those are to be consistent with the Housing Accountability Act that usually bypass Planning Commission's review, but using the preliminary design review process gave the Planning Commission a opportunity to provide feedback without rendering any decisions.
And it's not binding as well, but it allows it, because of all the changes in the laws, right? It allows us to provide allows the Planning Commission to provide feedback and input on designs. It's actually it sounds like it's an elegant workaround of some of the restrictions that are coming to us from Sacramento. Is that your assessment?
Correct.
Nicely done. Thank you.
And to kind of bounce off that, our fees are generally cost recovery, and that's the reason for the fee.
That's correct, Mayor.
Thank you. And, yeah, thank you. Any other questions? All right, since this is a public hearing, I'd like to open up to the public. Do we have any public comment on this item?
There were no speaker cards submitted, nor were any emails received.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Any comments from the council?
I would just say that I think it was part of our discussion when we considered the ordinances that were referenced. But I think part of the reason for the change, elegant, as stated, was to also allow for the public participation and view into that, because I think previously this process was being handled at the staff level, and so I think there were concerns that the public wasn't necessarily aware of these applications, and I think obviously we have a very active community who's very interested in these types of applications, so I think that was also a huge rationale for finding a workaround to allow for that to be a public in a public forum.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. That's well stated. Thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay. So,
Do we have to make a motion on it?
yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay. I'll move to approve the amendment of the fee schedule for fiscal year 22 and 23.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Let's open up our second public hearing. The second one is the Sierra Madre Police Department's carrying concealed weapons CCW process and amendments to the fiscal year 2022-2023 general fee schedule. And we have Acting Chief Amos.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Today I'm here to do a report on the department's CCW processing, and then additionally we will be requesting some cost recovery free amendments to add it to the general fee schedule. So in June of 2022, the U.S. Supreme Court made a decision in the New York State Rifle Association and Bruin case where they struck down the proper cause for CCW permits in the state of New York. The state of California has a similar process where individuals had to show proper cause for a CCW license to be issued. With that being struck down, the Attorney General has said that is no longer a mechanism for the overall process, and And now agencies will have to make determinations on other factors. In 2014, the City of Sierra Madre Police Department actually entered into an agreement with the Sheriff's Department to process all of our CCW permits, as did most other municipalities within LA County. Since that decision in June of 2022, the Sheriff's Department had anticipated an influx of CCW permits. So they essentially told all the municipalities that were not doing CCW permits that they will no longer be doing them, and that the individual cities needed to start the process. Since then, our staff has put together our internal process, which I will be presenting today. And it's very kind of straightforward. Initially, an applicant who is a resident of the city will complete a state application form and provide a list of documentation that they need to bring in to the department. The application and those forms will be reviewed by our supervisors and will be vetted. And then at that time, there is a processing fee that the applicant will pay. Once that is taken in, the applicant will be scheduled for a background interview and a live scan processing. The live scan processing is currently not being done by the department. It will be done by a outside vendor. And once we receive the live scan results back and the applicant has their interview, they will then proceed to a psychological exam. Once we receive the results back from the psychological exam and they have passed both the live scan results, which come back from the state, and the psych exam, they will go to a stage 2, which is they have to complete a firearms training course. And then they will eventually, after that, sit down with the chief and have a chief's interview. And the chief of police will make the ultimate decision on whether a permit is issued or not issued. Anywhere within that process, the individual can be denied for a number of different things. If their fingerprints come back from the state and the state says that they're not able to possess a firearm or are not capable of, not allowed to have a CCW permit, they can be denied for that. The psych exam will be weighed, the results, if the psychologist says that they feel that the individual is unsuitable. Ultimately, that decision of whether they move forward or not is made by the chief. So the chief will get the results of the exam, barring any HIPAA information, and then the chief will ultimately make that decision. If a person, just right off the bat, if a person has a restraining order, obviously they can't possess a firearm and they cannot have a CCW. Certain arrests for certain crimes permits an individual from possessing a firearm, so therefore they cannot get a CCW. So there are a number of different factors there. Currently, since 2014, the LA County Sheriff's Department has processed and approved 11 CCW permits. They have about 8 permits pending, and they have denied 1. Those individuals, the 8 that are pending and the 11 that they already have approved, those individuals will stay with the Sheriff's Department, so when they have to renew their permits, they will not come to the Police Department. They will go directly to the Sheriff's Department, and the Sheriff's Department will continue to be involved with those individuals. So that is the CCW process for residents in the community. Additionally, we'll be requesting some cost recovery fees. The state allows a application fee, which is a non-refundable fee, which is 20% of our overall CCW fee that we have in the fee schedule. That's currently at $155. 20% of that is $31. We're requesting a $30 non-refundable fee. That fee is paid when the person initially provides us the application. If they are denied in the process, that fee is not returned to them. That's $30 that they provide to the city. Additionally, there is a pass-through fee For the psychological exam, the overall psych exam costs $300. 150 of that is paid by the applicant. The other 150 is paid by the city. We are requesting that the 150 fee be put into our fee schedule. It's a pass-through fee. It's just letting the applicants know that this is a fee that you'll have to pay. It is a state requirement if that psychological test is done, for which we'll be sending individuals through. Additionally, we are requesting amendments to application fee of $10. This is a state set fee. The amendments could be anything where the individual who has a permit before the 2-year cycle permits will be issued for 2 years. If they want to change a firearm that they have on their permit, that is a amendment for which they have to pay for that, and we process that. There could be other amendments where if they move from one location in the city to another location in the city, they need to update their address. Amendments as that. And the last fee that we are proposing is we'll be issuing a card to the individuals for their CCW permits. If the card needs to be replaced for any reason, we're requesting a $15 fee be put in for that for cost recovery. One of the things that is very important is that when a CCW permit is issued, it's similar to a driver's license. It's not forever, and if you violate any of the conditions or you in the 2-year process become unable to possess a CCW permit, it can be revoked, and we will, if the department is notified, we will investigate it and make a determination of if that individual should maintain the CCW permit. So that is my presentation. I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Chief Amos.
Yes.
Do we have any questions from the council? Mayor Pro Tem.
Just a few questions. The fees that you mentioned, I guess, other than the psych fee, because that seems to be capped by law, we expect that to cover 100% of the increased cost that we'll incur by having to take back this permitting process?
So currently there is a fee of $155 on the fee schedule for CCW permits. I do anticipate that by the beginning of next fiscal year, that price will increase. To what extent, I do not know at this time. The department has not done CCW backgrounds for a number of years. So for me to increase the price without actually having some feasible facts to say it takes us 3 hours or 4 hours, and based on that, we need to increase it to here. That's something that we're going to evaluate. I can say that we've already probably will have at least 10 people within the first month applying for CCW permits. I expect by the beginning of the fiscal year that probably 20 people will. There may be more, but that will give us some numbers to make some accurate changes to our fee schedule. So.
And this might be a question for the city attorney. When we're faced with a situation where we can't necessarily accurately gauge the actual cost, what is the process there? We have to underestimate so that we don't worry about overcharging, or can we extrapolate that the costs are going to be increased and actually, I mean, bottom line, I don't think the city should incur any costs for this. So I just feel like if we're going to charge a fee, we should, be comfortable that we think it's going to cover the actual cost, even when we don't know what the actual cost is going to be.
So thank you for the question, Mayor Pro Tem. Once we have a sense, I think I'd recommend that the city do incorporate this into some kind of fee study, so we can have a proper study done on what the actual costs are, because the costs aren't simply those borne by individual officers reviewing it. It's also all the effort that went into drafting these rules and drafting the application and all of that. So there's a lot more to it. To answer your question directly, there is no requirement that we underestimate. I believe it's the chief's, I think the chief is providing the most accurate estimate he can provide at this time, given what he knows. And I believe that the cost here is reflective of that.
Okay, thank you. And then just my other question was, you mentioned obviously that the county has been doing this processing for a number of years and has, issued 11 licenses. I assume your department has the information on those permit holders, and so we know?
We do not have the information on those individuals. That's something that we can request. I don't know if the sheriff department will release that information or not.
So who enforces, like if someone walks into, City Hall with a gun and says they have a concealed carry permit and we don't know who the permit holders are, how do we enforce that?
Each permit holder is given a license, either a card license or a paper license, that they have to carry with them at all times.
Okay.
Law enforcement will come in contact with you, and one of the requirements that is across the board is that if you come into contact with law enforcement, as myself, when I'm not working and I'm in my plain clothes, if an officer contacts me, the first thing I say is, hey, I'm a police officer and I have a concealed weapon on me. Concealed weapon permit holders have to do the exact same thing. Officers will conduct an investigation. They will see the permit. They can call that agency. They can verify that information, and if the information is accurate and valid, they're given their firearm back, and they can go about their business. If the establishment, like some establishments, like the one I like, Dodger Stadium, I as a police officer cannot bring a firearm in there unless I am working and paid for by Dodger Stadium. So if I go to watch a game, I can't bring my firearm in. So if that's similar to something that is in place at wherever they're at, then the person has to take their firearm back out to their vehicle and put in their vehicle. If we contact the agency and they say they have no record of it, or it's expired, or revoked, or suspended, or whatever, and the person hasn't renewed it, then we take legal action there. Officers can choose to make an arrest. They can take the legal steps there.
So going forward, if we're processing the applications, we then would, your department then would have the information and would be able to skip that verification step?
Yes. So it's very easy, just calling the agency on the card, reaching, usually for us, it will be our dispatch. Our dispatch can run that information and provide that. That's similar for other agencies. And just on your previous question with the fees, so as of now, other than the Sheriff's Department in Los Angeles County and obviously Los Angeles Police Department, I only know of 2 other agencies in LA County that were processing CCW permits. Everybody else is starting fresh and new, just like we are. So everyone's making estimates and decisions, and in reviewing the fee schedule, we already had that fee in there. So I wanted to keep it there and just come back with some adequate information to say we need to bump it up to this amount, which could be double, which could wage rates could be double, but if we do that, I can accurately say that. So,
has there been any discussion with these agencies? Like, I'm wondering, one of the things that stood out to me is there seems to be a little bit of economy of scale here, right? If you're, which is why we contracted with the sheriff, right? They probably had a department that did this, and they were, skilled at it and experienced. Has there been any discussions with other local agencies about trying to consolidate, like, much like Pasadena sort of handle some of our the jail handle some of our detainees? Has there been any discussions with your counterparts at other local agencies to kind of?
There's been discussions of that, but nothing's gone forward. It's been talks around the table, but no one's taken the lead on it. Just because everyone's trying to figure everything out first, and then once they probably figure everything out, it could be a situation where different agencies like us, Arcadia, Monrovia team up to do CCW permits for those 3 different agencies. So.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Anyone else?
I had a question, kind of piggybacking on that time amount that it's going to cost, time and effort that our staff is going to spend on this. And one of the last requirements that the chief gets to decide is of good moral conduct. And I would assume that's like interviews and background, a little bit of background checks saying, because it lists some criteria like current abuse of alcohol and controlled substances, conduct involving violence, threats of violence. That seems to me, if you had 10 in the first month that we're anticipating, that's going to be a lot of time and effort that your department would have to do. So within that, we don't have that into the cost. How are we going, do we see that that's going to be an issue with, especially with the new chief coming in, trying to move forward with public safety and?
I can say that every agency that I've talked to is going to see that as an issue, no matter what. Just because if you haven't done something before and now you're doing it, luckily our department, we have about 3 to 4 staff members, a sergeant, our detective, and actually 2 of our reserve officers that will be able to do processing for our CCW permits. There are some agencies where it's just 1 or 2 people, and those agencies are bigger than us, and they only have 1 person doing it. So even though there is going to be a influx of people, which we anticipate, and we may not accurately incur costs in the beginning, I'm hopeful that moving forward we'll have something in place. I rather err with articulatable facts, because that's my job. My job is to go with facts. So I rather say, okay, we've had 10 applications. It took, instead of 2 hours, which it says on the fee schedule, it actually took my people 4 hours. So 4 hours of cost for that time can equal to this. And then I can accurately come back to City Council and say, we want it to be here, and this is the reason why. And that's the way that I like to work. I can't speak for my soon-to-be boss, but that's the way I like to work, and that's the way I want to move forward. So yes.
Councilmember Parkers.
What's, Chief Amos, what is or Acting Captain Amos, I'm sorry, Acting Chief Amos, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get it right.
It's okay.
I'm tripping over all kinds of things tonight.
I do the same thing. Last time I was up here, I froze for about a minute or two,
Well, thank you for that. That's incredibly graceful. Tell me about the renewal process. What's involved in the renewal process? Did you have to go through, do a psych exam as well? And
so for the renewal process, you mentioned the psych exam. When a person initially applies for a CCW permit, the department can choose or not to choose to send that individual to a psych exam. The state does not offer criteria that says if you meet this threshold, we send you. You meet this threshold, we don't. That's up to the individual agencies. For the renewal process, our CTW permits are typically issued for 2 years. At the end of the 2-year cycle, there is you'll essentially almost go through the same process again, except for the psychological exam. California Penal Code states that I cannot automatically send someone to a psych exam unless there is certain criteria or I wouldn't say criteria, or indicators of that would make the department choose to send a individual. And again, for the state being as the way they are, they didn't provide any indicators of what that is. So it's left up to the agency to make their individual determinations.
And, yeah, thank you for that.
Yes.
How many firearms can you get with a concealed a CCW?
So on the most agencies, and including us, are limiting 3 firearms per 1 permit, and you only get 1 permit. You don't get 2. So on the permit, you'll be able to have 3 firearms. If you choose within the 2-year period, that's what the amendments are for. If, let's say that one firearm you don't have anymore, you sell it and you buy a new one and you want that one on your permit, you have to come in, you have to fill out the amendment form, pay the $10 and go through that process. But it's only 3 firearms.
Got it. And so we have to absorb half the cost of the psychological exam because by law, it's estimated to be $300, and by law we can only charge the applicant $150, right?
Yes, we have to use the same psych company that is used for employee psychological exams. That company for which we currently use charges $300. The state caps the price for the individuals, for the applicants at $150. So the city is going to incur the additional cost.
So, thank you for that again. So you said we've got 11 permits in the city. There's another 11 that are going through the process?
There's, with the sheriff department, they have issued 11 since 2014.
Right. There's another 8.
They have an additional 8 that are pending in their application process.
And you said you expected another 10 to come through our brand-new process.
So.
And you also said, I'll get to a question, just bear with me just a second. I think it'll make it more efficient.
No.
You expect 10 more to come in, and you also said there's an influx of permits coming in. Like, we're seeing the data of that. Can you tell us, why is there an influx? Why are people all of a sudden really wanting to having CCWs?
Well, before this decision, but before the Supreme Court decision, to possess a CCW permit, typically you have to show due cause. You have to show cause for the permit. And the cause has to justify the issuing of the permit. Just because you wanted one doesn't necessarily mean that you get one. With the Supreme Court decision in June of 2022, that due cause portion has now been taken away. So unless you have some other items that restrict you from possessing a firearm, period, then you will most likely be getting a CCW permit.
Okay. Last question, a little bit of a tangent.
Yes, sir.
Do we know if the individual in the Monterey Park shooting, did they have any type of permit for the weapons they were carrying? Or is it too early?
I do not know, but at last I remember, I think what I heard, one of the weapons was a MAC-10. I know my department will not be issuing a permit for someone to carry a MAC-10.
Conceal a MAC-10.
It's kind of hard to conceal.
So for those of us that are not firearms aficionados, can you describe what a MAC-10 is?
MAC-10 is it's a semi-automatic handgun. It's kind of, geez.
I want to make sure we're keeping the public hearing to the.
It's the level of firepower that a MAC-10 provides is a little bit more than a firearm. Typically, on the permit, you'll either have a revolver, either compact revolver or some type of revolver, or a semi-automatic pistol, for which police officers carry, and you mostly see that. The size will vary depending on if it's a full-size model like I carry for patrol, or like I mostly carry because I'm a little bit older, or like a lighter gun. I have a smaller firearm that's a little bit more concealable. It's a concealed weapon permit is to conceal the weapon. If you want it to be known that you have a weapon, then that defeats the purpose. So.
I think some background's okay, but we want to make sure that we keep within the scope of the public hearing. Councilmember Goss, do you have any questions for Chief Amos?
Just curious. I'm assuming I know the answer to this. These permits are not public record. These are all privately. So a person who gets a permit from us, that knowledge of that is limited to the people in the police department. Is that correct?
Yes. The information is limited to the individuals within the police department. There may be a chance that some information may get released to the public if through some Public Records Act request or something to that effect. But even that information will be limited on what is actually released to the public. So it's in those situations, obviously, I will always defer to city attorney to assist me in what can and cannot be released.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Amos. So I'm thinking about the fire hose of potential burden on our department. It's my understanding that when someone purchases maybe a handgun, the DOJ will do some kind of background check, and I think they say 28 or 30 days. But when there was an influx of people, more people, there was a process that took longer than what the DOJ stated. Are we required? I want to make sure that we're funding and we're making sure you have the tools you need to do this through the fee schedule. Are we required to process it within a certain amount of time? And if so, do we have to consider maybe other amendments to the fee schedule to make sure we can?
So I anticipate that the overall process will take about 6 months. Just because, as you mentioned, the state can be slow sometimes in returns for their live scan. So typically, when a new police officer comes in and they are live scanned for the background process, usually takes about a month and a half to get the return back from the state. So that can be extended out. And you won't move to the second phase of the process until we get the first phase done that says you're at least able to possess a firearm. So that's live scan results from the DOJ and the psych exam results. The second phase, you actually go through, you have to take a training class. So there's additional cost that is there.
I don't want to interrupt you, but yes. I think my question is more of, let's say we have a detective or whoever is processing this, investigating a crime that happened in our city. Is it okay for them legally are we okay to like push that to the side and say we have this that this is hot, we need to deal with this, and then come back to this the process?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. With most agencies, the individual processing the CCWs is also doing something else.
Yes.
So if something else becomes more important, then that gets pushed back to the side. Just for reference, the sheriff department currently is not even looking at applications for at least 4 to 5 months.
Okay.
That's what they.
I think it's good to know as far as we think about the funding for you guys.
Yes.
I don't have the fee schedule in front of me right now. You mentioned that we do have an application fee that's already in the fee schedule. That's why it's not in this agenda report.
Yes.
Do we have a renewal fee, or is that the same as the application fee on this fee
For right now, that would be the same as the application fee. The renewals won't happen for 2 years, so I have time to look and see and what the appropriate cost would be. I anticipate by the beginning of the next fiscal year, we should have all of our possible fees put into the fee schedule so that they're there.
Thank you. And do we get the fee schedule? From my recall, it comes somewhere around the beginning of the fiscal year. Is that no? Maybe it was in the fall. We generally get the fee schedule. When do we revise that?
Mayor, I don't have that date, but I can tell you that we are looking into doing a complete fee schedule on all the fees for the city, and obviously this would also be included in that.
And as far as the rate study that Attorney Garagosian mentioned, is that something that's formal? We have to pay a consultant, or can we do that in-house and that's with existing staff?
Due to the level of complexity that we will hire a consultant to complete that.
And it wouldn't be just for this item, it could be for the entire, okay.
Entire city, yes.
And just one point of clarification. A rate study is different than a fee study, like rates being for, let's say, water service, but fees being what the chief is talking about here. Fee studies can be done in-house. Rate studies, we always farm out because those are very technical.
We have to, yes. Okay. Thank you.
And just for reference, some of the fees that I had mentioned, and possibly the renewal fee, some of that is regulated by state code. So we may only be able to charge so much per a state regulation code. I didn't quite focus on the renewal portion because I just wanted to get the initial portion in, seeing that I have 2 years to kind of figure all that out. So yes.
Thank you, Chief Amos. Any more questions from the council? Okay, let's open up this public hearing to public comment. Madam City Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, there are no speaker cards submitted, nor were there any emails either.
Thank you. Okay, back to council. Any comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
I would like the fee schedule to be higher. No, I'm not, I mean, I know I said it in a funny way, but, I appreciate, Acting Chief, Amos's approach, and I totally get the idea of using, fact-based analysis to set it, but I think we can reasonably estimate that our costs are going to be higher, especially given the volume that we expect. And what I'd hate to have happen is that we get this initial, wave, we use that information to modify our fee schedule, and then we get 2 more over the next year because people who have been itching to do this, per your question, rush to do it, and then we've basically not recouped real fees for the bulk of the applications that we get. So I know we have to sort of, thread this needle, but I feel like we can make a reasonable assessment that, it's gonna cost our department, the ramp-up fees, the sunk costs that we already have in terms of putting together this application process and the applications themselves. And I don't know, I just feel like we're gonna end up losing money here, and I just don't feel like this is something that we should be subsidizing.
Yes, thank you for that, Mayor Pro Tem. So that, to me, that is that the fee that we already have on our fee schedule needs to be increased because a lot of these fees, well, the first fee is contingent on our actual fee within the fee schedule. It can be 20% of that.
Right.
So it wouldn't be a fee that we're looking at here, but it's a fee that's currently on our fee schedule. Is that the gist of it?
Right. I mean, and whether these, whether the proposed additional fees, are appropriate as well. And I appreciate that some of them might be capped, and you should expect me to add something to the agenda, or to agendize something at the end around that. But, yeah, I mean, so I appreciate that. I mean, obviously we can't, charge more than is allowed by law, of course. But to the extent that we have discretion here to some degree, again, not doing more than cost recovery, those limitations, I really do think that we should be thinking more seriously about increasing it given the anticipated influx.
What do you propose?
It's hard to know, right? But I mean, I guess the question is, if we overcharge, what's the penalty, or what's the?
Yeah, I would counsel the council against trying to come up with some number today because it probably won't be defensible. I think if the council wants to see a higher number, maybe to continue this item and offer and allow the chief to go back to his staff and maybe reconsider some of the other costs that can be incorporated into a future fee. But I wouldn't, I'd advise the council not to try to come up with a number from the dais.
Yeah.
That was actually the direction I was thinking, was to go back and ask the acting chief to sharpen the pencil a little bit. And I agree completely with Mayor Pro Tem that I prefer not to have a penny that doesn't have to come out of our pockets on this come out of our pockets.
Mayor, just clarification, the fee schedule is brought to council in June, so we'll be bringing that to June, to the council in approximately 5 months.
Is there a way to, because this is, as reported, this is gonna be a process, right? And it seems like we have some time, even if someone applied today, we have, an amount of time before that process is gonna be complete. I mean, is there a way to, do the fees have to, there are multiple points at which fees are due in this process. Does each stage have to be justified as to the cost of that stage, or is it sort of an all-in? Like, to the extent that we discover it's gonna cost more to do the initial processing than the initial fee, can we end up charging that on the back end with a later fee? I guess is what my question is.
Like an up to amount?
Yeah, basically, like, so that all in, all of the fees together cover the cost of the entire application versus like, oh, we need to figure out how much the initial processing is versus this part versus that part.
Mayor Pro Tem, I think what I would feel comfortable with is delaying this process. As Acting Chief Amos stated, The Sheriff Department has applications that have been pending for 4 to 5 months. We could do some additional analysis, look to see what other cities are charging for the application, how many hours they plan to incur for this process, and bring this item back to council once we have that information.
Yeah, because we're looking at what we're here, our preview of tonight, there are 4 items, and the 4 items aren't anything, it's not the fee on the fee schedule that we probably want to see. Yeah, it's hard for me to believe that an amendment to the application, changing a firearm on the CCW, $10 is like 2/3 of minimum wage for an hour, right? How does $10 cover that? I would think that'd be a little bit more than maybe 2/3 of an hour of a minimum wage employee to do this. So I'm not really concerned about these ancillary fees. I think from what I'm hearing, the concern is more on the recovery on the actual fee that's currently on the fee schedule, and that we look at that. And these as well, per the public hearing. Can we add that fee to the public hearing, or would it need to be a separate item?
So I believe the public hearing lists what those fees are. I could be wrong. City Clerk, if you have clarification on that point.
The public hearing notice that we published in the newspaper advised that there would be changes to the fee schedule, but did not specify what the changes would be.
So in that, does it say related to a specific item? It does, right?
For CCW permits.
Right, so to the extent it relates to CCW permits, yes, it can be added at that, because the public notice doesn't specifically identify what those fees are.
Okay, that's good to know. I think that's good for the council to know.
Yep.
Okay.
I have more, sorry.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
And this is probably not a question that can be answered tonight, but I wonder if we know if there are additional safety precautions that perhaps we could include as part of our process. And I know we've talked about this a little bit in other contexts, but requiring proof of a safe or a lockbox or something that these guns will be stored in, is that outside? I mean, we need to know if that's outside the bounds of what's allowable, given the Supreme Court ruling on this. But we've talked about potentially discussing that as an ordinance, in general, but specific for this process. Is there a way to, add requirements as part of the fee process that that the applicant can demonstrate that these guns are being stored properly?
So, Mayor Pro Tem, I recommend that, because I have to consult the regulations, because there are very strict regulations as to what the city can and can't do. If any of the council members have concerns or they want to introduce specific gun control items, if you could email me so I can have an opportunity to review those ahead of the next council meeting when this is discussed, and I can have a firm answer for you then.
And some of those items, they would have to be fee-based questions. I mean, I'm hearing maybe a future agenda item coming, rather than just the fee schedule item regarding the public hearing. So it could be accountable.
Is the public hearing just the fees, or is it also the permit application process? Because we also got all of the sort of process documents and the application.
That's a great question. I thought it was just the fee schedule.
I believe
the fee schedule is the reason for the public hearing.
It says the Sierra Madre Police Department carrying concealed weapons process and amendments to the fiscal year general fee schedule, so it's both.
So we could, to Councilmember Creep's point, is that we could have something in the process that you have to demonstrate you have a safe to be able to lock the firearms in.
Or something.
So
you're right.
And again, yes, that is possible, Councilmember. I would just request that any such requests be submitted to me ahead of time, so that we have sufficient time and I can talk to the police chief about whether these are lawful to include in any kind of application process.
Okay, sorry, I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, to legally have a long rifle, you need to prove to DOJ that you have a safe, or you have to sign an affidavit. I don't think that's the same for handguns, though, is it?
I know that the state does have laws in the books requiring storage of firearms, so there are current penal sections that relate to that, and also on the application form, which is a state form, they do discuss storage as well. So yes.
Okay.
I'll add this one other point. The Bruin case came out in June 2022. So that overturned what New York was doing, and California looked at what it was doing and it said, well, the process we follow seems a bit discretionary like New York's process. So the sheriff's department didn't want to touch it anymore, put that responsibility back on the cities. But just, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago in January, the Supreme Court upheld New York's most recent regulation governing concealed carry permits. So now we have some guidance to follow, guidance that's been upheld by the Supreme Court, or regulation that's been upheld by the Supreme Court. So I suspect that there might be some amendments coming to this body of law from the legislator now that the Supreme Court has said this is okay and provides us a model.
I'm confused on that because if the Supreme Court in January approved New York's new law, I mean, that they couldn't have agendized that as they do in the fall, and then had, I don't know what the equivalent of hearings are between the Supreme Court and then it issued a decision. Is it more that they declined to hear the case, and in that case it means that it's legal? Like I'm trying to understand what you just said there, because it's a very important point, and I want to make sure I clearly understand what happened with the Supreme Court.
So I haven't followed the Supreme Court procedural posture to know exactly what took place. I'm just reading the press release put out by the the Attorney General of New York, and just quoting, it says, the U.S. Supreme Court has decided to allow our state's gun safety laws to remain in effect. Now, whether that happened via a hearing or because they declined to take up the case, I don't know.
Okay. I think at the end of the day, we need guidance from the state of California's Attorney General if we're going to have policy on any of this. And I think we should steer clear of policy.
No, but I'm glad to hear, for example, that Acting Chief Amos mentioned that there are, certain requirements around gun safety and gun storage. So I don't think it's unreasonable for us to require proof of compliance with law to be able to, that's part of what's in the background check, right? I mean, part of what's in the background check is to see if there's been any, violations, any arrests, any things, things like that, convictions and such. And so it seems to me just a natural extension to ask for proof that they're complying with existing law in giving them this type of permit.
Understand, yeah. Yeah, I think for handguns, it's a trigger lock that's required to even leave the store. Yeah. Okay. So do we have a motion regarding this public hearing?
Is the motion to continue it?
I believe so.
To a date certain or uncertain?
It feels like it's going to be uncertain, but whoever lobs the motion, we'll see.
I would move to continue this hearing to a date uncertain, to both give time for the legal analysis and also to make sure, we have packed schedules, and I want to make sure that we're not upending other business as well. So that's what I would propose.
I'll second that.
Do we need to discuss kind of the fee-based portion from Chief Amos? That needs to be done as well.
Wouldn't that be part of the continuation?
This is all the public hearing,
Okay,
right?
okay. Just wanted to make sure that was in there. Okay. Is there a second?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you, Chief Amos.
Yes, sir. Have a good evening.
Okay, on to discussion. How are we doing as a council? Do we need a break, or are we trucking along? I'm fine.
We
just lost it, yeah.
Oh.
So that's why I'm checking.
Want to take a 5-minute break?
Yeah, let's keep it to 5 minutes. There are people here that want to hear the discussion. So let's take a quick 5-minute break, and we'll return.
7:30.
Yeah, let's resume at 7:30. Thank you. 7:30. Depends on which clock you're looking at.
I know. That's true.
Okay, we're now on to discussion on our agenda. The first item is from the consent calendar, item B, which is the consideration of award of professional services contract for a feasibility study of 350 West Sierra Madre Boulevard to retrofit for the new police department building. All right, do we have Director Semino? Yes, we do.
Hi, good evening, Ms. Mayor and members of the council. Forgive me, I wasn't prepared for a discussion tonight, but I will give you a little background on the project itself.
Thank you.
In early 2022, the City Council approved the acquisition of the building at 350 West Sierra Madre Boulevard, otherwise known as the Bank of America building. And the goal was to convert that building to the public safety facility to house the police department. The police department and the fire department share an existing building next door here, and with the increase of staffing for a full-time fire department and the police department growing into a department that's sizable for the size of city we have kind of outgrown that building. So this was a timely acquisition of this building. So staff sent out an RFP for architects and space designers for that building in the anticipation of a tenant improvement of that building. We had a budget with HARPA funds for $1 million for this tenant improvement of that building. So in that RFP process, we received 38 firms, engineers, architects, space designers downloading our plans. During that period of time while we were waiting for the proposals, we had numerous inquiries about the RFP, the budget of the building, and we started discovering that a tenant improvement for that building may not be enough. We didn't have at that time plans on the building, how the building was built in 1964. We didn't know the structural stability of that building. We did some research before we purchased it, and we knew that it was seismically safe for a bank building. But as we discovered during this process with the input from architects, is to have that as a essential safety facility, there is other requirements that that building will have to meet. Not only the ADA, the other things that would be normal for a municipal facility. So we had a lot of downloads of the RFP, but we did only receive 2 proposals from 2 architectural firms. Both firms are very well-renowned. They are highly qualified for a project of this size. And both of them have the same style of fees for their designs. Architects seem to charge 10 to 12% of the anticipated construction cost for a building like this. Both of them had different designs, different ideas, different costs going along with their things, with their designs that we weren't really into yet because we didn't know what we were going to get into there. So it was kind of hard to base it on fees. So I discussed with the 2 architects that submitted the proposals about doing a feasibility study. We've done a feasibility study in the past for the YAC when we did a second story on there. The feasibility study will have the architectural firm come in and evaluate the existing building, evaluate the 350 West Sierra Madre Boulevard, find out what the police department needs are. In the meantime, we have found a set of plans for that building, so they will have that. Plans today, you would have a stack of 50 sheets for just the structural of the building. This has 2 sheets for the structural. So the plans we have, it may not tell them everything they need to know, but it will help out. So at this point, we're suggesting to hire Dunbar architectural firm to come and help us out with a feasibility study of the building. What they will do is evaluate the building's needs, find out what the police department needs are, I mean, I can go through the list of the scope. They'll review the infrastructure and then prepare presentation for the council and tell us what the needs of that building will be and what the potential cost of those needs will be. And then maybe a construction schedule, a time frame for the design of it and then for the construction of it. And then the council will know more, we will know more of what that eventual cost will be to make that an essential safety facility for the city of Sierra Madre. So our recommendation is to, staff recommends the city council award the professional services contract to Dunbar Architecture to proceed with a feasibility study in the amount of $47,595 and allocate another $30,000 for services outside of the architectural scope that staff will conduct, like the geotechnical review, survey, and possibly CEQA of the building. That's our recommendation. I'm here for questions.
Director Semino, thank you for an impromptu presentation. I appreciate it. It was technical and enlightening. So now I'll ask Councilmember Parkhurst if he has any specific questions.
I do, and I apologize for making you stay later and come to something that you weren't fully prepared for, and I will echo what the mayor said. You did a really good job on your feet. So one of the things that was in the Dunbar report, and I don't know if this may be to the city attorney, is that the Dunbar proposal stated that that is their understanding that if selected for this phase of the project, Dunbar Architecture will also be awarded the full project if the city decides to pursue either of the provided options from the submitted report. Does that create any legal liability for the city? They say, I mean, there is light language in there, but you know, it is something to say, well, we expect if you award us this, we're going to get the whole thing.
So Councilmember, I'm not familiar with that line. Is that in the contract itself, or is that in their proposal?
No, it's in the proposal. So I've not seen anything on any of their contractual language. So it may not be in the contractual language. It jumped out at me of, you know, I don't want to go into this with them having the full expectation that they're going to get the work and that this is, we have to go through the review. You know, as you see tonight, we're going to ask questions on it. I just want to make sure that it doesn't end up being a problem for us in the future. Thank you, Mayor.
Right. So, thank you. I'm just going to read this real quick, and if you don't mind, Director Semino, if you could opine if you know whether or not there's an expectation that they're going to necessarily receive the future contract.
Yeah, in the proposal for the feasibility study, they did mention that, and I've discussed it with Jen Dunbar about that we could not guarantee something like that. That wouldn't be written in our contract.
Okay.
But like I said, the professional services for a project like this, the firms do have a standard percentage of the construction costs. So,
right.
You know, they've laid out that they are 11% of the construction costs. That could help us in the determination of to what size and what we want to do with this project also. So the contract, you don't have a contract in front of you. That language hasn't been written yet for this project. We were looking to get approval for it, and then the contract would be submitted to the city council or to the city attorney at the next meeting.
And when was the last time we did a tenant improvement project? You mentioned the YAC. Is there, like, what can you tell us a little bit about our experience in doing tenant improvements?
Well, there's a difference with tenant improvements and building a second story on the YAC. Tenant improvement would have been maybe rebuilding the showers at the pool house, rebuilding the bottom floor of the recreation center. We did do those before. Most of the time, it's a design build style contract. From what I recall, I wasn't the director at that time. I did help and oversee some of the project, but they would be design build where you would hire the architecture to design it, and then they would assist in the acquisition of a builder, and then they would oversee as a project manager of the projects.
And is this a design build or a design bid build?
This project itself, we're not at that point yet.
So we don't even know that, okay.
We're looking to see what we're gonna wanna do with that building before we go to the next level.
And you said we budgeted $1 million for this, and what did Dunbar come back with? They said it was 2 to 4 million, is that right?
I think theirs was like 3.5 million for what they envisioned of doing with that building. SVA Architecture is the other bidder, and they were around the same. I mean, a little bit more, but their design was more, and more inclusive of carports and solar panels on the port.
I believe it says 4 million from Dunbar, 4 million for the building work and 2 million for the site work.
So 6 million is what that adds up to. So 6 times what we're thinking about. This is part of the reason I wanted to have the discussion on it, because, and is it right to assume that we haven't done anything quite of this scale in a long time?
In a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm comparing to the Yak because that was a major second story. We have rebuilt the reservoirs at Miramonte, which included a pump house, and that was a design build also with engineering firms.
And I mean, we're going to have a similar type of big project with the library, you know, and its RFP's out right now. I mean, you got a huge job in front of you, and we're thankful to have you here. What expertise do we need? I'm a little concerned, like seeing we budgeted $1 million, and we're seeing the potential person we're going to go with going $6 million, and you know, I'm looking at that going, that's a whole lot. That's a big miss that we had, and so I want to make sure like we get the resources we need. Is it anything beyond this feasibility study? Like, what do you need to make sure? Because I don't want you coming back here and asking for you know, costs. I'm trying to think of the changes. You know, the contract changes, change orders. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's bad for both of us. I want to make sure we all go into this together with the right decision. And so my question is, what can we help you with to make sure we go into this eyes completely wide open?
Well, that's one of the reasons why we pivoted and went to a feasibility study, because she's going to take 10 weeks to do a study of this. We're going to come to council, and we're going to present to the council the project itself. And at that time, they will have the cost estimates, and then we would be able to know more about it. It isn't the tenant improvement that we anticipated from the very beginning.
Councilmember Parkhurst, if I may add, one of the reasons why the bids came back so high, potential for construction, is because there were so many unknowns. And we feel that with the feasibility study, we'll have a more realistic understanding of what it's going to take. So there was a lot of assumptions made in that initial RFP, and we'll feel a lot more confident with having the feasibility study give us the more accurate information.
And so we could go with another architecture firm to oversee the project. That would be kind of somewhat unconventional, wouldn't it? Is it because somebody's got the architecture plans, they know all of the, you know, they know all the details of it because they've worked on it, and in this case, you know, we're going to have another, so we'll have a feasibility study. Okay, here's my question. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud. We're going to have a feasibility study. What's the next step?
Feasibility study, we'll come back and we will determine what the needs are of that building, what the cost will be of those needs, and then at that time we could either enter into a contract with Dunbar and Associates or Dunbar Architecture for the design of that, or if the council wishes, we can take this information that we have and go back out with a new RFP for an architecture firm, knowing what we need, what the needs are of that building.
And Dunbar would be allowed to bid on that, even though they've done the feasibility study. I mean, at some level, that gives them a competitive advantage, but that wouldn't disqualify them if we went out for an RFP.
Yeah, that's more of a city attorney.
Right. So two things. First, regarding this point about this language in their proposal, I believe the city is going to use our standard PSA form for this to enter into this agreement. As such, they're going to incorporate the proposal as Exhibit A to the agreement. So I recommend, Councilmember, if you'd like, just strike this line from the proposal, and then for this amended proposal to be submitted as, or to be included as Exhibit A to the agreement. So that's the first point. The second point is because this is going to be a public work, I believe it's going to go to the lowest responsible bidder. So
The architecture and the feasibility study are professional services.
Right.
And if they stay under the threshold, then they wouldn't be a public works construction. It would be a public professional services agreement.
Correct, he's right. So the architectural services aren't subject to the lowest responsible bidder rule. We can consider other factors. So they would bid like everyone else.
And then, so if this is gonna be design build, right? Is that right, Director Smino? With our plan, or we don't know what that plan is? Because if it's a design build, do we lock in on the price then when we select the architecture firm after the feasibility study?
You know, I don't know at this time if we
Okay.
would do a design build. The design build, there's advantages to that, and there's also disadvantages. You know, it could be a design, project manage the project itself, and we still go out to bid for the construction.
Okay.
So it makes a little bit more sense to me.
I've asked a lot of questions on this and pulled it, so let me let others go ahead, so thank you.
Thank you. I think it's important that you pulled it up. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have a?
I did have a question that I was gonna ask during consent. I guess the question I have is, you know, it seemed like, the potential increase in cost for renovating the building to be the new, police station has to do with this, designation as an essential service building. I know one of the other things we've talked about, and I think we talked about in discussion of purchasing the building, is having, you know, basically, you know, using that space perhaps for something else and perhaps adapting certain space here instead for the public service. Is this building an essential service facility or whatever that designation is?
I would think we'd have it evaluated for that, but the one thing that this facility already does have is the generator, so it has backup power for when the power is out in the community. It was built in the 70s, late 70s, so the structural will be, you know, different than the 1964 building. It is an enclosed building. There would be items that this building would have to retrofit, but it's probably closer to being an essential building than the other one.
Yeah, I guess what that's leading to is there value, or do we think there's value in perhaps including sort of as an incremental part of this process with Dunbar, an assessment of that option? I mean, I guess it would, I don't know necessarily want to add a whole feasibility study for this building, but I guess to the extent that we thought that might be a better use of that building might be for, you know, more administrative staff, all of those kinds of things, you know, versus the public safety building. Is that something that we could try to include in this so that we're not then reinventing this, you know, as a separate process later?
Yeah, I'm sure I would be able to negotiate with Jen about that process. We could, you know, it is a feasibility. If, you know, if that building isn't feasible, or this, you know, we can look at this one. You know, the fees may change a little bit, but she did submit a fee schedule for, you know, hourly rates for the time of their staffing. So we would be able to monitor that and include that.
Yeah, it just struck me that it would probably be overall cheaper to include that, at least conceptually, in this contract than having a completely different contract to do a different feasibility study for this building.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
I saw a couple things that I was questioning as well. As part of the, we were talking about what you basically get from this feasibility work. Under the SBAs at the other company, they subcontract for some of the work. And the one company, Maya Moto, they stated that they own the documents and the drawings that they would produce, and that we are allowed to copy them. But if at any time we terminate or our work is suspended with them, we do not have the right to use them. So I'm wondering, is that the same, do we have that issue if we don't go through with that same company for the work? And I didn't find that in anything with Dunbar, but I only found that in that. What also struck me, and my other question was, how did we choose between these? What was some of the criteria? When I was reading through, I liked the history of the SVA because they had already worked on many public safety and police essential buildings, whereas Dunbar had not. But it was interesting, in the analysis stage, in the first research stage, they stated that they would not get on ladders to look, they would only be a visual analysis or research base, where they would go inside the building and use a visual, I forget the wording, but it was a visual like analysis of what they were gonna do. And there was no ladders they would get on, they wouldn't do any other type of studies. I'm like, that's interesting. Like, I'll go in and look. Okay, this is gonna cost that, that's essential. So I was kinda curious, like, how did you and the city manager determine which company you would feel most comfortable with?
Well, we interviewed, or I did, city manager, I informed him of what we were doing, but I interviewed both architectural firms. Dunbar and Architecture is a smaller firm. They're currently working at the library, the Arboretum, on their new entrance there. We just had a little more connection talking about the police department and the facility itself. SVA is a bigger firm. The person I was dealing with for the bid proposal wouldn't have been the person that we would be dealing with for the other aspects of the feasibility study. At one point, you evaluate on professional services. You evaluate and you look at their fee schedules, and you have to be familiar with them and be able to work with them also and get comfortable. So that's pretty much how I made the determination. There is a patent or a copyright, and I think that's where Matamoto, they're a structural engineering firm, and they might be referring to that with their plan sets. I'm not too sure. I don't read that before I do it.
And Matamoto is the subcontractor with SVA.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm wondering how much of this is, because we talked about the meaningful improvement to the library a couple years ago. That was $7 million. I mentioned inflation. That's why we asked for $10 million. This is a different type of project. I'm wondering how much of it is architects and engineers saying, oh, what can we do with this space, right? And getting excited. Something beyond the scope of what we were envisioning as a council and as staff. When I'm hearing these numbers, I'm thinking maybe that's an aspirational type of build from an architect or an engineer rather to what our needs are in this city. I don't know how much of that's in there.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with it. I think we're going to experience some of that with the library, but I think that has a lot to do with this project itself. I mean, it's very exciting. Looks good on a resume when it's completed. The library, we have a little advantage. We have other designs that have been done in the past. We have, I think there's even a feasibility study done by a library professional that went through the building and talked about what the needs are of a current library and the space needed and all that. So the library has a little bit of advantage of what I have with the existing building.
Yeah. Any other questions from council, from Director Semina?
It's true that the library does have a whole committee too, in a commission that
We should be
oversees
careful.
it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I could go down that road, because I have thoughts there too, but I am uncharacteristically holding back.
Thank you. So we pulled this item from the consent calendar. There's no more questions. We opened the consent calendar public comment. I think we should open this to public comment as well. So do we have any public comment for this item? Any public comment? No? Any cards, Madam City Clerk? Emails?
There were no cards or emails for this item.
Okay. Let's bring it back to council for comments.
I was just gonna say that one thing, in terms of the difference between the two bids is also, I think, the cost. I mean, it seemed like it was nice for Dunbar to allow us to pull out the things that we could do ourselves and not charge us for that, and so it was nice to spend only, 48-ish instead of the full 83. So, I mean, I did like that, actually. We may have some ability to cost save on the 30,000 side.
Yes, yeah. Any other comments?
I'm glad that staff took this approach. I think it's they saw the challenges and adapted and changed tacks, changed approach. So I really commend them for doing that. I think some of the two big neon warning signs that I see on it is that 38 people downloaded and only 2 bid. That makes me a little bit nervous. And the fact that we're seeing one of these bids come back and saying $6 million. So I support this. I'm going forward, but I just, we've got a lot of construction, some big construction coming up in the next year or two, and I just want to make sure we're very thoughtful and intentional about this and do it. We get one chance to do this right. Like we talked about, this building was built in the late 70s. So we're talking, about 50 years that it's been in this shape. And this public safety building is going to be around probably for the same amount of time. The library is going to be around, the current library has been around longer than that. And so I just, I appreciate everybody's patience in me pulling this and discussing it. I'm supportive of it going forward. I just, I'm a little nervous of this. I want to make sure we do it right. And so I want to continue to have these discussions going forward and have this discussion coming back with the feasibility study and the recommended next steps.
Thank you for that. Okay, so do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the award of a professional service contract to Dunbar Architect in the amount of $47,595 and the allocation of an additional $30,000 for services outside of that scope.
Second that.
Councilmember Goss with a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, next discussion is the recommendation for the YMCA lease renewal, Community Recreation Center and Aquatic Center at Sierra Vista Park. And we have Director Silva Barone. Thank you. I was having a moment there.
That's okay. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council, community, and I just also wanted to take a moment to introduce some of the faces of our YMCA that have been here and patiently. We have Jennifer Sullivan. She's the new regional lead for LA Metro Y, and then we also have Kurt Knope. He is the executive director, and we have Nancy Yuen Perales, who is the operational executive director. So, city manager, as well as executive team members and the YMCA had the opportunity to negotiate the terms for the lease renewal affecting the Community Recreation Center and the Aquatic Center. Additionally, the Community Services Commission and the subcommittee also took time to review and offer recommendations to support the operational and programming changes for the future. As such, it is recommended that the City Council review and approve the changes for the lease renewal in partnership between the City of Sierra Madre and the YMCA. The term would commence with an effective start date of February 1, 2023 through January 31st, 2025, and with the option to renew the lease for an additional 3-year period. As an alternative, the City Council may direct staff to change the negotiated terms in the lease. And thirdly, the City Council may direct staff not to renew the lease with the YMCA. As a brief summary, the YMCA has leased the Sierra Madre Community Recreation Center for over 10 years now, and so we have a standing working relationship with this organization with their last agreement that was renewed in 2019.
Subsequent to that, then we also entered another executed agreement for the operations and lease of the aquatic center, also for an initial term of 2 years. Fast forward to the present, this evening, our goal is to have the lease renewed and approved with the recommended terms for the services, operations, and maintenance, integrating both of the facilities for that effective period. The current monthly payments have remained the same, and they are $3,000 for the Community Recreation Center and $4,000 for the Aquatic Center, for a total of $7,000 per month. Some key points to take into consideration today is that the YMCA would be providing an annual report detailing the facility programs and operations and responsibilities, and that would be to the City Council, and then later in the same year to our Community Services Commission. Also, you'll see an increase in Sierra Madre rentals for any type of city-related use. For example, we just held the public town hall last week, and also for the temporary city library to be used during their existing building renovations. Also, we are accounting for capital improvements, any daily operations and maintenance responsibilities, and equally important, the improvements that are very essential to the community for programs that are offered to both residents and visitors of Sierra Madre. Our Community Services Commission really expressed passionately different areas of concern. So as it relates to the Community Recreation Center, for instance, we are proposing additional 80 hours per year, for example, with proper notification to the YMCA 30 days in advance, which would allow us to continue respective programs, services, or rentals, and however, those would fall under the rules of the city. And as mentioned, for the temporary library, beginning in fiscal year 2023-24, the city would be permitted use of the Sierra Madre room for that period. And we also have our city librarian here this evening, should there be any further questions as to the use of the temporary library, should any of that arise. As it relates to the aquatic center, for instance, we have a total of 25 hours that are being proposed for supervised pool parties. And that would involve, for instance, the 8th grade float the boat, the 5th grade end of school party. We have our library summer reading challenge, and then the annual 4th of July after parade open swim at no cost. And further than that, we go into an item that we also had the opportunity to update our council on this afternoon, and again had the privilege of working with Kurt throughout the day today to help us narrow this down, and that's the recreation swim component. So under the agreement, both the 33 and 1/3 yard size pool and the wading pool, which is we know as the baby pool, would be accessible for recreation swim for 1.5 hours for community use Monday through Saturdays. And that actually is consistent with the school district summer calendar. I noted that Pasadena Unified does start their vacation on June 2nd, and their students actually return to school on August the 14th. As it stands with the YMCA, this would correlate with their Get Summer program, which is a program that operates June 15th through August 15th at 0 cost, so it's free swim, and that is for youth ages 12 to 17 and 3/4, as Kurt specified, and that would be inclusive of a parent waiver. And so anytime outside of that window during those summer months would offer recreation swim as well, however, at no more than $3 per day. So we are capturing that summer time frame for the community youth as well and participants. Additionally, lap swim was another very important factor to be considered. So The YMCA is committed to no less than 3 hours of community lap swim every day that the facility is open. And that would be for participants 14 and older, morning, midday, and late afternoon, in addition to all their other programs and services. For maintenance, the city will continue to oversee capital expenses, and that of course includes any renovation or improvements of the existing elevator and or lift related to that facility, as the Y also continues to manage maintenance. And any type of ambiguity between maintenance versus capital would then be resolved at the discretion of the Director of Public Works. So in conclusion, we are very dedicated to supporting the healthy living and community services goals of the YMCA, and to continue our partnership to really improve the lives of our residents and visitors. The only financial review really here is that the city would also be able to reduce the rent by $1,000 that was calculated based on square footage for the use of the Sierra Madre room for the temporary library. And other than that, I am open to answering any questions. That concludes my report. We also have our YMCA representatives, should there be any specific questions as it relates to their organization, and our city librarian, Layla Regan, for any questions that also relate to the use of the library.
Thank you, Director Silva Brown, for that comprehensive report. Council, any questions? Councilmember Goss?
I think I know the answer to the question, but
yes, sir.
last time we had this in front of us, we had a lot of people showed up and were not happy with the Y services. And there was a new manager installed at the time, and we were asked to give that new manager some time to get his act together or whatever, to get things ironed out. And I understand that that new manager has left at some point here since in that interim period. So I'd like to know what the management of the pool looks like right now, and have the customer complaints diminished in any way.
May I ask our Executive Director to come up and share a little highlight on the current management of the facility.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is Kurt Knope. I began my tenure with the YMCA in November of this past year, and was installed to manage specifically the Sierra Madre Pasadena YMCA. This is the first dedicated branch executive director that we've had at the facility for some time. Jennifer Sullivan, our regional vice president, could probably tell me how long it's been, maybe ever since we've had just a dedicated. We've normally shared the responsibilities of managing this facility with our South Pasadena and San Marino YMCA. And this was a commitment not only of the Y, Metropolitan Los Angeles Y, which is again a 27 branch organization with 3 summer camps that I hope you're all familiar with, that we are part of. But it also was a commitment of the local board of managers, who made a commitment with some type 2 funding to ensure that the branch had their own dedicated person involved. So without going into my entire resume, I will tell you from an aquatics perspective, since Councilmember Goss, your question came a little bit from that. I served 17 years as the executive director at the Rose Bowl Aquatic Center in Pasadena. I'm a 31-year resident of the city of Pasadena, so I'm committed to this community. My first real foray into Sierra Madre was when our daughters began playing softball, and I served as a manager at Sierra Madre Girls Softball Association and was on their board. In fact, I think the last time that I was in council chambers was when we were sending a team off to district regionals that I had the pleasure.
I thought you looked familiar.
So it's I'm very committed to your fine city, our fine city, and I'm also happy to announce that Nancy Ewan Perales, who's also here as our operations executive director, who really, not single-handedly, but had a large hand in getting the facility back open post-pandemic, that Nancy has returned to join us in the efforts. She will be working with both our branch as well as South Pasadena and San Marino. But I'm here. I'm committed to taking our efforts, and which has already been fantastic across the board, really, in terms of usage, and I think the overall satisfaction in the 2.5 months I've been here. I haven't heard any complaints, and I haven't heard from Rebecca or from Laura as to, or Jose, as to issues that have come up with patrons, although we're open to those being the case. So,
Can I just follow up with you, sir?
Absolutely.
I understand that there was a kind of lagging period after COVID ended last year where you had significant staffing issues, and particularly over the summer, we had the pool not open when people really needed it during heat waves. Are you telling us now that those problems have been ironed out?
I think those issues are resolved, and I think we continue to. The overall industry, from a lifeguarding standpoint, and even swim lesson instruction, that is not a unique situation for us, either at the Y or here specifically in Sierra Madre. I will say that this region works in concert together, and the region is made up of not only South Pass San Marino Y, our Y, but also the Santa Anita Y and Montebello, and there is a very cohesive, collaborative effort amongst guard staff to also cover if there's any shortfalls, and I think that's much more comprehensive than it was even last year. We also would like to staff up and ramp up this year and hope that we can encourage not just young folks, but people who maybe retired early, or somebody who's just passionate about health and their well-being, who want to contribute or help and give back. Seniors are welcome to be lifeguards. It's not just a young person's role.
Will you be reaching out here in Sierra Madre?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. We will be working very closely with Rebecca and her team in communicating that, and we'll also be having some job fairs as we enter toward the summer months especially.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Goss.
I have a question for you that you might be able to help. If we do end up using the Sierra Madre room for our temporary library, where would you then have your spin classes and the other recreational classes that you hold for our citizens?
Very fair question. Thank you for that. Our intention and hope would be that we would be able to co-use the upstairs space that we refer to as the Youth Activity Center, but that we'd be able to manage the programming such that we could use that space. That's the goal, and that's the anticipation, is that we'll be able to use that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Director Knope. Let's open this up to public comment. Did we receive any yellow cards for public comment?
There were no speaker cards or emails for this topic.
Thank you. All right, back to council for comments.
I think that's significant that we got no public comment and no emails, because last time we dealt with this, it was quite a attenuated discussion and debate. So that sounds to me like things are running smoothly. That's a pretty good indication.
Yes, yeah. Any other comment?
Yeah, I just actually wondered if we could add, and maybe this is a question for the director, in terms of the annual reporting, because we'd had so many concerns from the residents about programming or lack of programming or staffing or lack of staffing, I'm wondering if part of the annual report could be a component about, community outreach, sort of, maybe a summary of concerns that were raised and then how they were resolved, because I do think that part of the problem previously was that we, weren't sort of proactive on that. And this would, I think, allow us to sort of monitor the community interaction.
Mayor Pro Tem, are you proposing an amendment to the agreement itself, to 3.2?
I mean, if that's what's necessary, it is pretty specific. So I think maybe we would need to add something. I mean, I'm happy to think about ways to do it kind of on a understood basis, but I do think that this is pretty specific as to what's in the annual report. So to the extent that we wanted more than this, we might consider putting in something a little bit around community outreach or community engagement. I don't know, what would your recommendation be?
Can I ask a question before we resolve that? And that is, so is it true that we're hiring a communications professional for the city?
Excuse me.
We are in that process, yes.
Okay. And would coordination with city communication and city outreach efforts, would that be part of that person's responsibility? I mean, clearly, the Y should have a role in this and designing programs and getting out to it, but it's kind of a collaboration I see with the Y of making sure we communicated on our end and make sure we get on top of it to exactly Mayor Pro Tem's point of, making sure that we avoid any of the miscommunications that happened in the past.
I'd like to defer the roles and responsibilities to City Clerk Aguilar.
Thank you, Councilmember Parkhurst. The city, has a partnership with the YMCA and works together jointly to promote their programs and as they affect city residents. The issues that are happening within the YMCA themselves, we would trust would be managed within their organization, but if there are issues that impact the residents, for example, there's an unexpected closure for whatever reason, the city would partner with the YMCA to get that message out and communicate that information to our residents to let them know. So there would be instances where the city would work in partnership with the YMCA to provide communications, but probably not the day-to-day.
No, and that's not what I was thinking. It's trying to get the. I think it is some of the big changes that happen. It's some of those big disruptions. I mean, clearly, COVID was huge, but some of the other things that change. We have some channels in addition to what they've got, and so having the Y bring them to us, we can help push those out. We can also make sure that there is good communication going on it. I mean, I see that as it is not a day-to-day thing. It is kind of an enhancement and a help with the broadcast and things that we can do as a city. That's all I was thinking of.
And enhancement is a good word. The Community Services Commission did identify that as one of the concerns. The YMCA staff was very open to receiving that and has already begun working with the city on ways to promote events going forward. So the talks have already begun, and there's some excitement that's coming from all that.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, what I was getting at was really more kind of a mechanism by which to receive information and basically hold the YMCA accountable for making sure that they're being responsive, being responsive to the communities. And I would assume that in many cases the community will reach out directly to the Y if they have concerns, not to the city. Although you're right, it does sometimes happen to the city, but then we obviously communicate that with the Y. So yeah, my idea was more about accountability, so that we know that the community concerns are being heard and addressed.
And that would probably go to Director Sylvia Barone on it rather than the communications, right? I'm just trying to make sure I'm thinking through, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm really thinking of it as a YMCA role, not a city role.
Yeah, okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, we could amend 3.2 to include accidents, incidents, residential concerns, and rescue reports submitted in their annual report.
Yeah, that could work.
That's an improvement. I like that.
And you mentioned that the annual report would be presented.
Yes, so that brings me to my next point. Because we had altered the commencement date and the termination date, initially we had proposed that the first annual report be due by March 31st, which would go to the City Council, and then consequently in October to the Community Services Commission. So I would like to recommend that we amend that date, because if they are effective officially February 1, then that only makes sense to push it further down the year.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
The intention was to place that date 6 months out.
Yeah, so it would be like August and February. Right. Yeah, that's fine. That makes sense.
And that gives us right after the summer, which is a peak use period. So I think that makes sense. Is that enough time to look at any of or to assess any of the summer programs? I mean, you wouldn't be able to get August, you'd get through July, but that would be a decent indicator.
We also don't have meetings in August, so it would effectively be September.
Yeah. But the report would have to be done in August per the contract, right?
It would have to be done in time to present whatever. Okay. Yeah, I would think. I don't know, I'm not that hung up on the dates, I guess.
I guess to the YMCA team, does that make sense? Is that, you know, swim has been one of the big things. We've heard the public comments about if we have the report in August, will we be able to get a good assessment of what happened, you know, the first half or the first 3 quarters of the summer? Okay. Fair enough.
So, it sounds like, are we making live edits here, or are we, okay, and,
September 1st is the date I wrote down.
okay. And, well, we need agreement with the YMCA that for these amendments, and it sounds like we have an oral agreement to both of those amendments? Yes? Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Comments, rather?
I guess my comment is I appreciate the cleanup language that's gone in. You know, we got the cleanup language in 5.2.1. And I think that it really does tighten things up and make things more accurate. So I do appreciate the work the staff has done to do that. Thank you.
I think it was mentioned, but I wanted to highlight that the Community Service Commission actually had a subcommittee that met with the public. I just, you know, we want sort of everyone to understand that, you know, that we took seriously the public comment that we got the last couple of times we've had the pool contract under consideration, and really did, you know, that commission did a nice job making sure that they listened to and took recommendations from the public who they worked with. So I wanted to commend them and the Community Services Department for really extending the outreach on that because of the, you know, the seriousness and of the concern in the community.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Yeah, I'd just like to say that at the Public Safety Town Hall meeting, I got to meet Director Knope, and he gave a short presentation, and I was thrilled that he gets us. He gets Sierra Madre, and I feel as though he's committed to being integrated within the community, having the Y integrated within the community. You know, bringing up things such as the float a boat for the 8th graders, bringing back the free swim on the 4th of July. All those little things that we've had, they're coming back, and I'm thrilled with that. I'll also like to say it's important that we have a temporary library. That's phenomenal, and at that rate, that's great. So thank you for accommodating us for that. I'd also like to thank Community Services Department, the staff, the Community Services Commission, the work that they've done. To your point, that subcommittee really took this agreement and took the aquatic component and really hammered that down to the benefit of our community, and thankfully to the Y that they were able to accommodate a lot of those things that we were asking for. So thank you. I think we have something better than what we started with a year ago. So that's a great thing. Okay. So do we have a motion to approve this agreement with the live edits?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to our last item on the agenda for discussion, and that is the referendum to appeal City Council Ordinance number 1461. I think we're going to hear from Deputy City Manager, City Clerk Aguilar.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This discussion is continued from the council's special meeting of January 12th. That was a continuation of the City Council's January 10th meeting. The City Council at the January 10th certified the results of the referendum that was circulated by proponent Barbara Valturo. The City Council at that time was presented with options for how to move forward, and continued that discussion to January 12th, and then it is now continued to this meeting. The options are that the City Council may repeal City Council Ordinance 1461, or the City Council may choose to set the measure to a vote at the regular election that would be on November 5th in 2024. The third option is that the City Council can select a special meeting, and that would be any time in 2023 or more than 88 days from the regular election in November of next year. And lastly, and I believe the council opted not to make this, choose this option. It was to direct the city attorney to prepare a report regarding the impacts of the referendum. Since the January 12th meeting, the city council directed the city manager to negotiate with the proponents to see if there would be some opportunities to take a look at what the proponents wanted, how the proponents wanted to move forward, and I believe those discussions have been occurring since the last city council meeting. And so I will let city manager Reynoso fill the city council in on how those negotiations have been going.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Aguilar. Mayor, since our last meeting, the city has been negotiating a potential withdrawal of the petition seeking to referend ordinance number 1461, providing certain entitlements for the Meadows Bailey Canyon project. The proponents of the referendum submitted a list of demands in consideration for withdrawal. The city and the proponents reached preliminary agreement on 5 of the 8 requested demands. In addition, the proponents of the referendum requested additional time to negotiate with the city. They also seek to further vet the developer's SB 330 application and analyze legal viability of a potential legal challenge. Proponents are requesting that the City Council schedule an election for June 6, 2023 to allow the proponents an additional 45 days to conduct their analysis. If the proponents believe they cannot stop or severely limit the SB 330 application, they will withdraw their petition on or before March 10. However, if the proponents feel they believe they can stop or severely limit the SB 330 application, they will proceed with the referendum. Some of the items on the list of demands include concessions from New Urban West. Today, New Urban West informed the city that they will honor those offered concessions through February 10th, 2023, after which they will withdraw from negotiations. In addition, New Urban West has agreed to offset the election cost if the council selects an election date of May 9th, 2023 or sooner. A May 9th, 2023 election date gives the proponents 17 additional days in addition to the 29 days they've had since they've been notified of the SB 330 application. This will give the additional 17 days. In that time, they will have to conclude their negotiations with the city and withdraw their petition. That is my update.
Thank you. Okay, bring it back to council with questions. I'm sure there'll be a few.
Go ahead. How many meetings have you had with the proponents since the last city council meeting?
I have had one live meeting. I have had several voice or phone meetings.
And how many meetings and discussions have you had with the developer?
At least 3.
And how much of this how much of your time has been taken up by these negotiations?
In the last 2 weeks, I would estimate that at least approximately 70% of my time, time on the weekends as well, has been devoted to these negotiations.
You said 70%, 70?
Correct.
And what city business is getting postponed as a part of that? What other things would you be working on if this weren't the case?
So in the last 2 weeks, we've postponed our strategic planning meetings. I've not participated in our executive team meetings, and I've had to cancel a number of meetings with executive team to go over their weekly reports.
And is this the time of year that we typically work on budgets as well? What's the budget cycle? Remind me of that.
So right now our finance team is working on mid-year. Beginning March 1st, as you know, Councilmember Parkers, we have a zero-based budget, and from March 1st through the end of May in anticipation for bringing a balanced budget to council in June, we will focus nearly 100% of our energy on going over every line item in our budget dollar by dollar.
That starts in March.
That starts March 1st.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Other questions?
Just a technical question. So the proponents requested a election date of June 6th. Working backwards, what is the date of the deadline for withdrawal before that date?
I believe the date is May 10th. I will confirm with the city clerk, deputy city manager.
I believe it's March 10th if I count 88 days back.
March 10th? March 10th.
March 10th, thank you.
And the Feb 10th is when would the election date be? If that's the date we have to, the decision has to be made on the referendum?
May 9th.
Okay.
Could you remind me of the other issues or state law besides SB 330 that are covered by this new proposal, the new plan?
So in my letter to the proponent's attorney, I highlighted 4 different statutes that are particularly relevant to this project. One of them is SB 330. The other is the Housing Accountability Act. The other is the Density Bonus Law. And there's also the Permit Streamlining Act. And I emphasize that those laws act, although they're related to the same project, they act somewhat independently of each other. So they all, were you to strike one down, the other 3 apply. So the proponents of the project as well as their attorney, I just wanted to make them aware that there are 4 laws at play that have different impacts on the project.
And so if 330 gets struck down, then how does that impact the other 3 laws? Like, how does that impact the proposal that the developer put forward, the 50-unit proposal?
So just quickly reviewing what each one does. SB 330 does 2 things. It creates this new preliminary application. The preliminary application essentially locks in the development standards at the time the development application is submitted. SB 330 also creates the 5-hearing rule, requiring us to process the application between the Planning Commission and the City Council over the course of no more than 5 hearings. I believe including appeals. So that's SB 330. The Housing Accountability Act limits the Planning Commission's and the City Council's discretion. So essentially the City Council and Planning Commission can't deny a project or reduce its density unless it makes certain health and safety findings and finds that those health and safety findings, health and safety concerns cannot be mitigated. So our discretion that we ordinarily have under, let's say, a design review permit for a single-family dwelling doesn't exist at least to the same degree that we have under the Housing Accountability Act.
If I can ask, I know you're answering a question. Is that the CEQA component, or is it something completely different as far as health and safety?
This is different than CEQA.
Okay.
But a CEQA health and safety concern can play into this.
Okay. Thank you for that.
The Permit Streamlining Act requires us to process permits rapidly. So it's about 30 days. The city staff has a 30-day review period in order to determine whether or not an application is complete. And then once determined to be complete, we have a certain number of days following the CEQA analysis to bring this project before the discretionary body. And lastly, the density bonus law is the one that allows the applicant to increase the density of the project up to 50 units and also to circumvent some of our development standards, including the height, square footage, etc.
So the question I asked was, how does it impact the 50 development unit? So it sounds like the density bonus allows them to get to that 50 units, the permit streamlining means that the project moves more quickly with less review, and the Housing Accountability Act means that we can't reduce the density unless there are some significant health and safety concerns that cannot be mitigated. Is that an accurate summary of the three laws, other than 330, and how it would impact the proposed 50-unit project that is before the planning before the planning department?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that question. Any other questions?
I have a question, City Manager. So is it my understanding that you met with the proponents? Is that a group, a large group? Is that a small group? It wasn't with council, so, and then the second part of that question is, in those discussions, they brought concessions towards you that they wanted, and then we kind of worked with New Urban West and with them? Is that how this process happened?
That's correct. From my understanding, they have a working committee of somewhere between 9 and 20 people. I met with 4 of them.
And is one of those people the person that can withdraw? That's for, I guess, probably city clerk.
The proponent who submitted their intention to circulate the repeal for ordinance 1461 is Barbara Balturo. She submitted the documentation to the city clerk's office within the appropriate prescribed time, and a receipt was offered to her specifically. The city attorney prepared a summary, and that was forwarded to her only. So she is the responsible individual for withdrawing the referendum, if that's the choice.
Councilmember Lowe, Mrs. Balturo was in the meeting, and I have had conversations with her outside of the meeting as well.
Thank you.
So I guess this is a restatement more than a question, but I'll phrase it in the form of a question. So there were 8 initial requests for concessions around the Meadows project, to be clear, right?
That is correct.
So the idea being that with these concessions, the Meadows project would become sufficiently acceptable such that the referendum would be withdrawn. And the developer, whoever is able to actually provide the concession, have agreed to 5 of the 8?
That is correct.
And are there ongoing discussions around the remaining 3, or have those been conceded, or what is the status?
Of the 3 that is left, I believe there's 1 outstanding item that we're still discussing. The proponents also mentioned that there might be some other concessions that they may seek. I informed them that essentially the heavy lifting was done, and that the developer is not interested in any further concessions. Any further concessions would be minor and something that the city only the city would be able to accommodate. It would not include the developer.
And I think this is probably a question for the city attorney, just in terms of the interplay between the Meadows project and the application for the 50 home project. The developer or the applicant is under really no particular requirement to make any of these concessions, correct? I mean, in the sense that they have a situation, as you've advised, as we've discussed in prior meetings, where they essentially have a pathway to either of these projects. And to the extent that they find concessions on the Meadows project to be more than they're willing to give, they could certainly pursue the other project in the alternative. And so I guess what I'm saying is that ultimately their concession on these items is sort of in a good faith effort by them, but because certainly they wouldn't be compelled to give those under any sort of seeking approval from the city or any other leverage that the city would have over that project at this point.
The short answer is yes, and the reason for that is because the developer agreed to pursue the Meadows project, but the Meadows project cannot go forward. The development agreement is what binds the developer, but the development agreement can't take effect until the specific plan takes effect. And the specific plan can't take effect until the ordinance takes effect. And the ordinance can't take effect until a referendum is withdrawn. So what the developer agreed to, and what binds the developer to move forward with the Meadows project, can't proceed. And in the alternative, the developer is pursuing this SB 330 50-unit project, and will continue to pursue it until the referendum is withdrawn. And there's nothing requiring the developer to make any of the concessions that he's made so far.
And just one sort of slight nuance on what you just said. I guess the case is that the development agreement through that process would not become operative until either the referendum is withdrawn or if it is put to a vote, defeated, correct? That would also result in the effectiveness of the ordinance and then waterfall down to the effectiveness of the development agreement?
Correct.
Thank you.
A couple follow-ups on that. So the developer, though, is currently bound by the development agreement, right? Because it hasn't been, the final decision hasn't been made. It's kind of, what's the right way to say it? Is it in limbo? Is it, because we voted on it, everything was agreed to, now we've got a referendum in front of us. What does that make the status of the development agreement?
Pending.
Pending. Got it. And because it's pending, could the developer just pull the Meadows project and say, I'm tired, take my toys, go home, let's go with a 50 project?
It's a point of contention between myself and the developer. I'd rather not get into it at this point, Councilmember.
My apologies. Understood.
Other questions? So, kind of going back to City Manager Reynoso's portion of the report, as I recall, I know I'm going to try to take a page out of Mayor Pro Tem Krebs and have a restatement and a question. But as I recall, the last time we met for the special meeting, we were willing to option another $100,000 for this election in order to have people get around the table in good faith and try to work out concessions in order to have a withdrawal of the referendum. In your report now, I'm hearing that kind of agreement in good faith is now kind of changed, and now they're looking for ways they want time in order to find ways to strike this SB 330 project. Is that correct?
Mayor, the initial meetings were to find concessions that would improve the project for the community, make it a safer project, and since those discussions, an avenue for challenging SB 330 has come up. You're correct.
And now the request is for more time, pushing the election into June, so maybe these concessions don't even matter anymore. Let's try to strike down the SB 330 application through legal routes.
I believe these concessions are very important to them, but I think they also would like to have an opportunity to fully vet the SB 330 application and conduct legal analysis to make sure that there's no loopholes, or that if there's any loopholes that they can stop the project from moving forward through an SB 330.
Okay. City Attorney Garagosian, have you, in your professional research and our city as well as other cities, has there been contention with SB 330, and have cities been able to go around some of the laws that have come down with more design control, with hindering this type of situation?
So I'll say that a lot of these SB 330, it's not new. It was adopted in 2019, so it's been around for a while. The Housing Accountability Act adopted in 2017. Density bonus law has been around since the 70s. Permit Streamlining Act, I think, has been around since the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. But all of these laws have been significantly amended since they were first adopted, specifically because the legislator is finding that people find ways around it. So the legislator comes and makes a new amendment. And so people have been able to poke holes in these laws. However, I point out that The legislator has closed a lot of those loopholes. The laws are intended to result in a lot of housing very quickly. That's the whole purpose of these laws. And there are 4 of them that are at play here that are independent of each other and that allow this project to move forward with limited discretion at the size it's moving, at the size proposed, and as quickly as I pointed out with the 5 hearings.
Any other questions before we open this up to public comment? No? Okay. I'd like to now open this up to public comment. Remind those that are going to make public comment, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you're trying to finish a thought, I will let you finish that thought, but please try to honor everybody else with their comments, and please state your name and your residence as you approach. Madam City Clerk, do we have any yellow cards?
Yes, we have 2 speaker cards, Mr. Mayor. The first speaker is Pat Alcorn.
Mr. Mayor and Council, the longer I hear about this discussion, the madder I get. It doesn't make sense for you to delay. There's been over a month of discussion, an unconscionable amount of time with our city manager, and it's just simply nothing more to discuss, I believe. Unless there's something that really doesn't meet the eye that we don't know about. Seems like just a delay process. So I urge you to set a date for the special election as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alcorn.
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Robert Jerde.
Robert Jerde, Vista Circle Drive. Thanks. As I said at the last meeting, this group will not negotiate in good faith. They misrepresented the facts through the whole Measure HR campaign, saying they're going to save the meadow and stop housing at the monastery. We all knew there's no scenario where that would ever happen. That was just delusional, but people believed the lies and they got the initiative on the ballot only to resoundingly lose. The people have spoken. Now they are holding the city hostage again. To what end? They have nothing left to campaign on. No reasonable person concerned with protecting or preserving Sierra Madre is going to support a referendum to build more homes and lose a park, 40 hillside acres and conservancy, and $250,000 for public safety, and $1 million for net zero water offsets. This is nothing but insanity. The time to negotiate a better project was during the many public forums and meetings that were already held. What on earth do they have left to negotiate that is in Sierra Madre's best interest rather than their own? I can't think of anything. The developers already met every reasonable request by the city. The time is up. There's one decision to make, an SB 330 project or the well-negotiated Meadows project. Every week you delay the vote, it costs the city another $5,000 in lost property tax revenue. This group, since the election, has cost the city $50,000. And since the project was approved, the city has lost well over $100,000. This is real money that could be used to make the city a better place. It's a roof on the Richardson house, and 10 years of funding the annual CERT training, hint, hint, and the Rose Parade float. All things the city could be spending money on instead of throwing it away on this fool's errand because a couple holdouts think if they delay again, they can find the magic bullet to stop construction. That ship has sailed. Enough is enough. These people are leeches feeding on our hope for reasonable resolution. I encourage you to set an election date tonight and be done with it. And how generous is the developer, New Urban West, to put up with this nonsense? They could have withdrawn the Meadows project after the last meeting, and nothing will stop an SB 330 project. They could have submitted a much worse project and still could. They should be commended for putting up with this process and sticking with the city as long as possible to see the already approved project that they have invested in come to fruition. I would have been done with Protect Sierra Madre and Preserve Sierra Madre a long time ago. They have no plan for making Sierra Madre a better place. Everything they do is resulting in a worse project. Please do not delay any longer. There's no chance the referendum will stop the Meadows project because SB 330 is a losing proposition for the city. The only way to guarantee to stop SB 330 is to hold an election. The voters will see through the inevitable lies that we will hear in a new campaign. Just get it done. Time is money.
Thank you, Mr. Jerde.
Mr. Mayor, there are no other speaker cards, and the city did not receive any emails on this item.
Thank you. Let's bring it back to the council for comments before we, I think, hopefully make a decision on when to set this election.
I'll go first.
Sure, please.
I think that we've been patient, New Urban West has been patient, our staff has been patient. We're making headway in these negotiations, but from what I'm hearing, there's not a lot left to negotiate. In fact, there's probably nothing of substantive left to negotiate. I'm not sure why we're sitting here tonight, because we had a great project, and now at least the people who are pushing for the referendum now have 5 major concessions that they didn't have when we passed this bill, this ordinance. So I think that it's incumbent upon us to make a decision to have an election. I think we should do it sooner rather than later. And I think sometime as soon as we can do this in early May, I think is the best thing to do. Which would I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, if we did a May 9th or 10th date or something in that area, we could still give our city manager and the proponents of the referendum another good 2 weeks plus to maybe hammer out some small details that maybe still need to be hammered out. But I see no reason to wait beyond that.
Thank you, Councilmember Goss. Councilmember Lowe?
I've just been doing some research also, just, looking at all these different cities that I think this is an issue that it's not just going to be us, and if this is happening now with us now, it kind of sets precedents for what's happening in our future. And our ability to be able to have so much review and control over what projects are coming into cities, and even just individual homes and individual condo complexes. So I do see that this change is coming, and I don't see that we can avoid a lot of it. I appreciate that we've had, I forget when this started, 2 years ago. I do appreciate that we've had so much control over, and we still do, because if we go back to the Meadows project, we still have control over the parks. We still have control over those things. If we give that all up with this other project, we don't have that control anymore, because it's under the new state laws. And so I would also like to move forward with an election in May. I think that would help all of our citizens, and I also think that the proponents would then still have the extra 2.5 weeks added to what, was it 45 days that we've already,
Roughly.
29 days.
So a total time to be able to get the concessions that they wanted and move forward. And if it goes to an election at that point, then it goes to an election at that point.
Thank you. Councilmember Parkhurst?
I'll echo what many of my colleagues up here said. This isn't, the alternative isn't an SB 330 project. It's much bigger than that. I think what we're hearing tonight, it's the density bonus law, the Permit Streamlining Act, the Housing Accountability Act, and SB 330. So, we have got the best project we've got, and it sounds like with the negotiations, we're continuing to refine and improve it. And so I'm willing to continue to have the negotiations going on about the Meadows project, about how making it better. I think anything about time on SB 330, the Housing Accountability Act, the Permit Streamlining Act, the Density Bonus Law, I think that's a distraction. I think we need to focus our time on that as a city. I also worry about the opportunity cost. 70% of your time, City Manager Reynoso, that is a lot of other things that we really need to have happen. We heard tonight about the public safety building, and we need to have you engage in that to make sure we've got a cost-effective building. It could be 6 times as expensive, and it's because you just didn't have the bandwidth to look at it, and that's not your fault at all. I think it's an important thing. It's just a fact of what we choose to put our time on. So I echo again what other council members have said. I'd like to have the election as soon as possible, and really encourage you and the proponents of the referendum to work quickly to iron out these last details. I applaud everybody for coming to the table. I'm glad we have cooler heads prevailing. I'm glad we're working through it. It seems like everybody's working towards the same direction, more or less. I'd like to encourage that, and let's take this home, and let's get the best project possible, and then move on to other important city business.
Thank you. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
So if you've been following along, you may recall that my main concern when we first started this discussion around the referendum and the potential withdrawal was the expenditure of city funds for an election. And I somewhat reluctantly agreed with my colleagues in the last decision to somewhat gamble on not setting the election for April and fixing the cost at a lower cost, and knowing that if we missed that date, that we were going to necessarily incur, between $75,000 and $100,000 of additional costs for an election later in the year. So here we are. I'm really just not willing to gamble again. Like we did that gamble so that we could have the good faith negotiations. And again, I echo Councilmember Parkhurst that I appreciate all sides for engaging in those discussions, and it seems like it's been very productive and fruitful. But I think I'm not willing to give up the financial benefit that the city manager has been able to negotiate with the developer to cover part of the cost of an election, that as long as we set it for May 9th or before. So that's just, to me, one gamble too far. And at this point, I think to echo others, we've taken a lot of steps, and I feel like we're at the point now where we just need to set a date and move on.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, so I echo a lot of what I'm hearing here. For me, I'm very proud of the community. We took the tenor of the conversations on social media and everywhere, and we stopped the finger pointing. We stopped with the blaming, and we got around the table to solve a problem, and there was a problem in front of us. And we gave, as a council, a good faith trust to the proponents that let's get around the table and try to find common ground. And now I'm hearing that, yes, that occurred, and I want to applaud that. It sounds like a lot has been done, but now there's a new reason for more time, and that troubles me. I'm not trying to be an obstructionist here as far as the process of democracy, but we could have set a date, to your point, at our last meeting. And now we're sitting here being asked for more time when we have, not us as a council, but our city manager and the proponents have sat down in good faith. So, I'm troubled. I do not personally want an election in June. As we think about, I'm a university professor as one of my jobs, and we get out mid-May. And we're going to see people on vacation, not around. Yes, you can vote by mail. Yes, there's 10 days of voting center and all those other things. But the incentive to vote is when you're in person in your town. I feel if we push it into June, the elementary schools will be out. We heard about the elementary schools getting out on June 2nd. We heard that today. If we push it into June, people are going to be out of town. This is not going to be on their mind. And is that a good election? Elections don't happen in the middle of summer for a reason, right? So I have no taste for June for that reason, because if we are going to hear from the electorate, we want to hear from the full electorate and not just part of the electorate. So that's why I'm in favor of an election in May, yet still giving some time to the proponents to hammer out some of these other issues, potentially another 2 weeks plus, if we're talking about, I think it was May 9th. So that's where I sit. I encourage the parties to still negotiate in good faith on concessions, on what is reasonable and what can be done. I'm encouraged to hear that we already have five out of the 8 concessions, and only really one of them is being considered. So it really begs the question: why are we even still here setting an election? Well, now we know it's because of trying to find legal remedies or legal ways to get rid of this project. So that's where I sit. I think we're of like mind here, and yeah, I think we need to figure out when to set this election.
I would move to set the election around the referendum, referending ordinance, city ordinance 1461 for May 9th, 2023.
And that's a Tuesday, I'm assuming.
Does it need to be a Tuesday?
It is.
So we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any further conversation before we go to a vote? No? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you. We're at the end of our agenda. I would like to personally have a motion to close this meeting in honor of those.
Can we ask for future agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry. Look at me today. I keep going. I keep trying to push this thing, and I know we have future agenda issues. So, yes, I would like to ask if we have any future agenda items.
And I'd like to see a discussion on the, I think it will be on our next meeting, the February 14th, on the library RFP, and then hopefully we can come back with an update on the public safety building. Those would be kind of the two things. The status update on the library RFP, kind of how many bids, what's the discussion, what's the direction. I'm just concerned about, well, I'd stop. That's what I'd like.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Deputy Director of Public Works gave a comprehensive report to the trustees, and if we could get that same report to council, I think that would be good. Yeah, thank you. And the other one was?
An update on public safety.
Okay.
Kind of, what happened with Dunbar.
Public safety building.
Public
Okay.
safety building. I'm sorry, I should have been more specific. That's the other one, yes.
Thank you. I think there were some other, Councilmember Lowe.
I'm not quite sure how we would word this, but coming to what we just discussed, also coming up with, when I was at the Planning Commission, this is coming up more and more with the different laws that supersede our general plan. And what do we do about that? So our Planning Commission doesn't have the same authority to recommend approvals as they did before. They can recommend design, they can give their opinions and what they would like to see for the city, but they no longer are able to supersede what the laws already state. So they would like some recommendations on, are there codes that we need to change? Are there, if there aren't any codes to change, then they have a smaller amount of reviewability. So what we would like their role to be in these new realms of SB 330 and density laws are changing, so they need some more guidance.
Yeah, I think I understand. I did watch most of the Planning Commission meeting on Thursday. So are they, but I want to make sure I understand, are they, because a couple of years ago, there was a discussion about having the, and I wasn't on the council then, I think only Councilmember Goss was at that time, to come up with objective design review standards. Are they now asking again to do that, or is it?
Three-part. One, if the city council would like for them to make recommendations on parts of codes that would change, for instance, heights in the preview process instead of where we have them now in the general code, general plan. Two, if the city council would like to give them guidance on what aspects to review. And then in part three, then if city council is happy with the codes as they currently stand, which is a smaller amount of review, how we'd like them to perform.
City Attorney Garagosian, does that make sense, direction on that?
So, getting back to your first point, Mayor, I believe Director Gonzalez presented you all with a list of items that he's going to, I think he prioritized them and a checklist of items that he wants to resolve before the end of the year. I think on that list was objective design review standards. Because that's such a difficult task, we tried to do it.
So are we getting into a discussion just to?
No, I think we're trying to figure out
How to word it
what the scope of the agenda, yes. But thank you, thank you.
So the planning staff did try to develop its own objective design review standards, and we found it to be a really difficult task to satisfy the strict definition of objective under SB 330, because it's not your typical understanding of the word objective. So I believe the director felt that if we do that, it's gonna go to RFP, and I don't know that we've budgeted for that or not, but that's one avenue. The other avenue here, it sounds like the Planning Commission itself has some thoughts about what can be improved in the code. I think they may have phrased it as, does the city council want to provide us direction? I don't know that city council members themselves have any particular opinion about what needs to be improved in the code. I think what's happening is they may be requesting authorization from the council to recommend potential amendments to the code. That's how I'm understanding it.
Would it make sense to perhaps, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Would it make sense to perhaps get a sense from Director Gonzalez, sort of what he thinks they are looking for, and then address that? I mean, because based on that, I would think that we would look to them to suggest, you know, make the improvement suggestions that they see, and that's the way we would proceed. I mean, that's sort of their purview, right? I mean, I laughed when you said, you know, do we like the code? I'm like, I don't know if I like the code or not. I, mean, I don't know.
Does it make sense anymore? So,
but I mean, they're you know, especially, you know, there's a number of those commissioners who've been on the commission for a long time, including one who's written, you know, a number of the code, the ordinances, and so it sounds to me like they have thoughts about ways to improve the code. And
so in the past, because we wanted to make sure that the Planning Commission remains focused, we told the Planning Commission that they shouldn't undertake their own initiatives unless they receive some kind of City Council authorization direction. So I think that's why they're turning to the City Council now for that authorization or direction so they can begin the work. And so if the City Council decides to provide that direction, we should probably agendize it for a future meeting. We could even invite one of the planning commissioners, maybe the chair, to come up and share some of his thoughts regarding what the Planning Commission is thinking.
yeah, I guess if that was the case, I'd like to see Director Gonzalez give us that list of items, and, you know, I guess we could hear his view on the prioritization.
Exactly.
Is that okay with you?
Yep.
Okay. Do we have direction on that?
I think we got it.
Okay. Anything else?
I think we covered mine around the concealed carry weapon permit. I don't think it's a separate agenda. I think we can keep it within the public hearing for both the fee and the permitting process.
Okay. Councilmember Goss, anything?
Good.
Okay. Am I okay to? Stumbling tonight. I apologize.
Hey, look, I had it too. I don't know what it is.
But in all seriousness, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting in honor of the victims, the families, city of Monterey Park.
And can we add Judy Gold to that as well?
And Judy Gold as well, yes.
I was thinking along the very same lines. So I would, if you'd ask for a motion, I would move for that. Thank you.
Sure. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned to the next meeting.
And Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.